I'll do a quick introduction to myself. So my name is Anita McGee. I work at Access Creative College, and I'm going to be your hostess for the mostest this morning, kind of doing the little bits in between all of our great industry guests that we have. We've also got Natasha, my colleague, with us on the call, who's going to be in the background doing all of the tech. She'll also be looking in for questions when we open up the Q&A box, so you can submit some questions, and if we have time, we'll try and get through some of those for speakers as well. But I think we should get started. So thank you all for joining us today. This is our talk for National Careers Week, exploring games in the careers industry. And we are Access Creative College, so we're a specialist creative college for students that are 16 to 19. We do courses in music, media, and of course games. Including our kind of level 2 and level 3 courses in games development, games art, and we also do esports as well. And we're really pleased to be hosting today's event in partnership with industry professionals and connections that we have to the college. Just to give you a quick recap of who we have today, we know some of you might be dipping in and out depending on when your kind of scheduled class times are. First up, we've got Michaela this morning, who's a games designer at Dovetail Games. She's going to be joining us in a few minutes to have a bit of a talk through what it is like to be a games designer and what to kind of expect from that job role. After that, we've got Gemma. She's a co-CEO of Dovetail Games. She's going to tell us a little bit about leadership in the games industry. We've got Aran and Josh, who are both sound designers, who are going to join us just before lunch in 2 separate talks to tell us about their experience of that sort of angle of the industry. We're going to have a quick break around 12:30 because I need lunch and I'm sure you guys need lunch as well. And then we'll be back around 1 o'clock to talk to Morrigan, who's going to tell us a little bit about the indie game scene. And then we've got a speaker at the end who's going to come and talk to us a little bit more about kind of the games art end of the world as well. So we've got a good broad range of speakers for you lined up today. So what can you expect from us today from our sessions? Well, you'll get to hear directly from industry professionals, so I will be quiet in a few minutes and let them speak. We're going to explore a different range of careers pathways. Hopefully they'll tell you a little bit more about what they do, what that means, and how they actually go about doing it as well. And you'll have a bit of an opportunity, hopefully, to ask some questions in the Q&A box as well. Hopefully you will find a little bit more about how to turn your kind of current skills that you have and that you'll develop as you go through your education into those career opportunities. And also hear some really honest advice about breaking into the industry. We've got some speakers today that are going to talk to you about their kind of journeys, outlining what they think that they did right, but also maybe some wrong turns that they took within that as well, and sharing that very honestly with you so that hopefully you can avoid kind of similar pitfalls in that as well. And just to set the scene a little bit before we get started, so the gaming industry in the UK is booming. There are over 28,500 people working just in the UK games industry, and there are actually over 2,000 UK-based games businesses. So when I mentioned earlier, Morrigan telling us a little bit about those indie game studios, you've got lots of the big names that I'm sure you'll know when you play lots of their AAA kind of games, but there's also a huge host of smaller kind of studios within the UK as well. And the UK game sector is currently valued at £7.7 billion. So lots of kind of revenue coming in and out of the industry. And the average salary is about £35,500. That is an average, so there will be people that earn more than that. There will be people maybe starting off in the industry that earn less than that. But that's just to give you a little bit of an idea of what you might expect if you're thinking about going into this industry longer term. And it's really important to highlight that behind every game that you might play or that is created, there's a whole host of people, and we're going to speak to some of them today. So we've got games designers, artists, concept artists, sound designers, there are also programmers and developers, but maybe also some of the jobs that you don't necessarily think about as well that might be worth looking into off the back of this. So people that might be the kind of business leaders or the entrepreneurs, think about the sales and the marketing and publishing kind of teams that do all the promotion and the advertising for the games. And then also the people that help things run on track into time, so your producers and your project managers. So it really does take a full team of people with very, very different skill sets and different experiences to work in the industry. And it may not just be the people that you initially think of in terms of programmers, developers, designers within that as well. And so we're going to introduce some of those different career pathways to you today through this talk. So Michaela has worked in the games industry previously for 4 years as a games designer before she joined Dovetail Games. And you also previously worked with us at Access Creative College in Lincoln as well. So it's really nice to see you back with us again. And Dovetail Games is a worldwide and award-winning company, and you're known for kind of immersive simulation and digital tabletop games. I'm sure you might tell us a little bit more about that. I think I've seen something about a Thomas the Tank Engine game. That sounds quite cool. I felt like I was reliving my childhood when I read that. It's really nice. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Michaela, if you're ready.
All right, no problem. But yes, I'm Michaela. But yeah, I kind of like all of you have started off my games pathway, also doing a games course in college too. Then I went on to university where I studied games design, and then of course I did a bit of teaching here at Access, and then now I'm at Dovetail. So I will talk to you a little bit about that. So of course, Dovetail Games, we do a variety of different things. We mainly are simulator games. So we do a lot of things for enthusiasts. We have a really big market for that. People really love trains, and they're an excellent community. So what is it like being a games designer? So for my day-to-day, I make something called a timetable. So timetables are the 24-hour services. So if any of you've ever booked maybe a train before, you'll see all the different times throughout the day. And I pretty much use all of that data to make the timetable itself. So I use real world data to make a virtual game. So we want to make it as accurate as possible. We want to use as much research as we can gather to make our timetables accurate, and also to represent them as best as we can. So we do a lot of different ones. We do them in the UK, Germany, America. So we have a lot of different content that is available. I'm also quite lucky. I get to use both Unreal Engine 4 and UE5. So I get to work on different games within the company, which is lovely. So we have a new game coming out. We have Metro Rivals, which I get to work on. I get to make some mechanics and features for this game. And it's really exciting getting to learn about different engines, how to use them, and it's really interesting. So what does a game designer do? So of course it depends on if you are looking to be an indie game designer or joining a company. So of course, one of the main things that we like to focus on, of course, is the pre-production stage. So there's many stages to games design. One of them is pre-production. So that's all to do with ideas and research. So in the stage, you'll look at things like, what kind of games are popular right now. So for example, Peak is quite a popular game. It had a lot of great attention and hits. People absolutely loved it. And, we're now seeing people take influence from that. And we're seeing many people make their own kind of versions of it. If you were going to make a game like that included farming or harvesting, things like that, you can look at Minecraft for exploring, Stardew Valley. These are all great games. So this is all great because sometimes idea generation can be a bit daunting if you don't really know what your game is going to be. So taking time to research other games, maybe similar games that, you have an idea for, is also really, really great. Also things like in our pre-production stage, we will have what we call the game design document. So I'm sure some of you are already familiar with this. So this is where you pretty much talk about everything to do with your game. It's like a Bible in a sense, and it's literally everything that you need to know, everything that you'd show your investors and things like that. Or it's something you may be given from a client. So one of the main things you'll include are things like mechanics. So a good example I have here is, of course, Mario Kart. If you're making Mario Kart, you'd have to talk about things like the power-ups. So how many power-ups are you going to have? How do the power-ups interact with the world? How do, the players interact with the power-ups? Everything like that. So it has to be super detailed. You'll have to have a lot of attention and care into this document. You'll also talk about something like the gameplay loop. So of course, the very simple one here is harvest, craft, and explore. So what does the player do? How do they interact with the world? What are they going to do? A game design document will also have information like characters. You'll also have things like the plot, the story. So all of this will be contained in here and many, many more things. So if you have a storyline, what's going to happen in it? Are you going to have different endings? Is it going to be a super linear game? Things like that. But it's super important to make sure you research all of this. And then, of course, one thing is super important, as some of you may know when playing games, is balancing. So you have to make sure your game is going to be good for a whole like host of different people. So how do you balance the game so that it's maybe not too frustrating, or maybe that is not too hard, or maybe it's not even too easy? So you don't want the game to feel boring. You don't want the game to feel, people can't complete it. So how do you make that game appealing to your audience? So it's very important to consider balancing when you're making a game. So it's also good for things like most games will have a easy, medium, and hard mode. So how do you balance that so anybody can play a game and they can still have, fun? So another thing we have is our production cycle. So what is our production cycle? So in this part, it's literally turning those ideas we had from our game design document into reality. So it's about starting to prototype them. It's about trying to figure out how they work. It's all about trying to make sure that your game is going to be playable. So, of course, here you'll decide on what engine you'd like to use. So this could be a visual scripting engine, so like Unreal, for example, or it could be text-based. So that's completely up to you and on what engine you use. So, of course, like there's Unity, there's Unreal, there's Game Maker. There's so many out there. So in this part of the design process, like we have here, you'll have your design. So for your mechanic, whatever that may be, you'll then prototype it. You'll see how it works in the game engine, and then you'll play test it, or you'll get people to play test it for you. So you'll have like a QA to do that, and then you'll evaluate how that went. And then it is a cycle. So it's continuous and you do it all the time. You'll also have a lot of collaboration with different people. So this is where you'll collaborate with art, with like UI, animation, concept designers, a whole different type of people here you will collaborate with. So it's really important that, again, going back to our game design document, it's super clear and that we can tell, maybe what kind of characters we want, what the characters may look like. So you can use things like mood boards. But yes, this is a very important cycle in our development. And then, of course, we have testing. Testing is so important. Testing your work is the best thing. I highly recommend you will always test. It's the number one thing you'll spend most of your time doing, because feedback is super important. Feedback is one of the main things that, of course, will help you grow your game. So get your friends to play your games, get anyone you can. So people, of course, will put their games up on, Steam for early access and things like that. That is a great way to have people come and test them and give you that kind of feedback. And then we have, of course, our post-production. So in our post-production, this is also very, very important. So we have things like our community feedback. So our game is very community-based, so we absolutely love it when our community gives us feedback because it shows us how to improve. It shows us how to improve on maybe things we've done and how to continue to grow our community. So things like day one patches. If we have anything wrong with that, our community will tell us. We have like Discords, forums, and places like that where the community will tell us if we've done anything wrong or if there's anything they would like to see in the game. We also do a lot of bug fixing in this stage. So in our post-production stage, we will take any feedback that we have and we will see how we can alter it. So it's very important to stay on top of your community and make sure that, they are heard. They are absolutely a fundamental part of the process. We have a look through things like Steam. So Steam has excellent reviews where we can go and look for how people are feeling. Did they like the game? How did the game come out? Is there anything that they would like to see in terms of going forward? And also things on Xbox and PlayStation, we have a look at how the reviews are there. So community is really important for any game, and listening to them is one of the most fundamental things that we can do. And then we have things like patches. So this might be things that maybe would break the game and that we will need to fix quite instantly. But yes, if I go back a few slides. Going back to this, this is probably where you'll spend most of your time as a game designer. This is where you'll spend most of your time making sure your work is perfect, making sure you iterate on the process, making sure that your design is seen, making sure that basically anything that you have is talked about, making sure that anything that, from mechanics to story to all of that is designed, is prototyped, and that the player can enjoy it. That is the most important thing, is how to make your game fun. Does anyone have any questions?
We did have a few that rolled through. Michaela, thank you, by the way. That was a really, really great presentation, and I'm sure there's lots of value in there for everyone who is on the call. We gave some of the guests an opportunity just a few minutes before you join in to put forward their questions. And one of them, which I think is a question Anita and I can certainly attest to, that we hear a lot, is about, as a young person, how you can get experience actually in the industry. And we were just talking about the fact that there's a lot of NDAs and things that obviously can happen. So it sometimes means experience is quite hard to get. But yeah, one of the questions that we did have from somebody was around experience, and as a young person, how to get that.
Oh no, that's brilliant. Thank you. So that is pretty much, you can also join, like I said back here, some Discords and things like that. So some of them will offer you a free key to play the game. So that is also quite a great way to gain experience. Or you have things like EA also offer kind of like a bit of QA. So you can sign up and then they will also give you a free key for a certain game. And then they'll ask you to do maybe a few hours of gameplay and just play the game, and you'll have to fill out a form and provide feedback on that.
Thanks, Michaela. The second question that we had, which I feel like you've done a really great comprehensive overview of it just through your slides just then, but was about what a typical day in the life as a games designer would look like. And I think, just to add to that, maybe seeing as we've covered some of that off, maybe what some of the most exciting things that you've worked on personally, and, how the day-to-days can differ sometimes of switching between different things.
Oh yes, so day to day, of course, will change. Some days, of course, depending on what you're working on. If you're at the start of a project, because we base all our games mostly in reality, so we have to do quite a lot of research towards a certain route. So if we're going to do a route in Germany, UK, or America, we would spend a lot of time researching it, trying to find out about it, trying to find out where certain trains may go, where they all like park up, everything like that. So day to day can change. It can go from working in the engine, so it could go from working in like UE4, UE5. It also can change by some days. It's great just to play the game and understand how it's actually progressed from the beginning to the end. Also, most of the time you'll spend most of your time testing the game, because that is the most important thing. Getting feedback for it is absolutely brilliant. But yes, day to day is a mixture of things. It can be anything from being in the engine, research, working with other departments. So like I said, you work with art, QA, things like that. So every day is an interesting day.
Thanks, Michaela. Really dynamic. I'm just going to give everyone the opportunity to have another 60 seconds or so before we move on. But one other question that I actually had was maybe what's kind of one of the things you wish that you'd known before working in the industry, before joining?
Before working in the industry?
Yes.
Ooh, that is a good question. I definitely think that your portfolio is really, really important. So one of the things is making sure you do have an absolutely great portfolio. Make sure you spend time on that. And also just how creative the games industry is. It's truly a wonderful industry to be a part of, and it's absolutely fantastic. There, of course, is lots of work that goes into it, but I definitely think that it's a great community. It's very connected, and that I think I wish I knew just more about how connected it is. It is really, honestly, a brilliant community to be a part of.
That's great advice, Michaela. And I think there's some of the key takeaways there for anyone who's just joining us. I can see we've had a few more guests. I'm just meeting someone else now. But yeah, what I think, key takeaways from that, obviously the community aspect, really honing in on that, and find those forums, find those groups that you can lean on other people's expertise, maybe people more experienced who have been there, done that. I think that's a really nice way to round that off, Michaela. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing those insights. And pass
No
back
worries.
to Anita.
Well, good. Thank you so much, Michaela, for joining us for that. I think it was really good to get that overview. And yeah, thank you for your time this morning as well. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So
Absolutely.
if Gemma and Lauren are okay with that, before I kind of we get started with a formal interview, would we be happy for a few questions?
Yeah, no, I'm good with questions.
Brilliant.
So just to revisit that first one that's come through, it's about how can you stand out when, what does it say? How can you stand out when wanting to get experience? Say you're applying, I think they mean in the context maybe of like applying for opportunities, getting work experience. I think one thing that we discussed on in the prior session to this was just about how, and this seems to be quite a common question that both Anita and I have seen throughout our time at Access, is, when we go to events at schools and things, one of the key questions we get is about experience, and obviously as a young person, how you can stand out, how you can get your foot in the door. So I think that's what they're meaning on that question there.
It's going to be a scary one because it's networking, and everyone hates networking no matter where you are in your career and your journey. But it is on your CV. So how do you stand out with your CV? Personalize it for what you're applying for. So for Dovetail, we'd look for people that have played our games, are passionate about our games, have experience in there. Even like we're train simulators, so even if you don't enjoy train simulator games, there is elements that you could pull on. So you found it relaxing, you enjoyed this element of it, you enjoyed this part of the onboarding, or you enjoyed this part and this is what you'd like to change, or this is what you would like to do if you were within the company. We meet a lot of students at events, so we're actually going to be, Dovetail will be at a Women in Games event. It's a careers expo on the 26th of March. It's online, so everybody can join, and there are all games companies in the exhibition part, and that's where you can meet the teams directly. So we've engaged with students coming in through to people that are changing careers.
We have had another that's just come through as well.
Yeah.
This one is about what studios actually look for when hiring people, especially in their early careers. So quite another kind of common question that probably segues on quite nicely from the first.
It depends on what role and where we're looking. If you're looking at junior or entry roles, and you don't have that experience to pull on, so if we take QA for example, you could get QA experience for signing up to beta and play testing. So Dovetail have a play lab. You can apply online, and we get people in to test. So you can draw on some experience there. It's hard, it's difficult, right, to get attention from your CV and get that face-to-face interview, because that's where you can really sell your passion and your love for the games and the industry. On CVs, Dovetail do job scoring, so we will match the CV against what is in the job description. So if we say we want Jira experience and you don't have Jira experience, directly Jira experience, pull on what you can. So mention Jira. You've looked at Jira, you're up for learning Jira example, so it's there. But we match against, it's a job scoring matrix, so it's non-biased. So what we put in the job description, we look for that in the CV or covering letter. So I'd really match your skills, and if you don't have those skills, mention it, but put that you're up for or learning, or how you would approach learning that skill.
Thanks, Gemma. That's really insightful and some great takeaways there, especially the testing thing. I think that seems like a great way for people to kind of get started.
Excellent route into the games industry.
Absolutely. Another question that we had for one of our previous slots of this one was, and I think it's great to put this forward to all speakers, in fact, on this call, because everyone will no doubt have different pieces of advice. But this question was, what's one key bit of advice that you wish you knew before entering the industry? So I guess maybe sort of any common pitfalls that you encountered, and yeah, I guess just anything that you wish you knew before getting started with your career.
Yeah, I suppose it will start a little bit answering my first question for the interview, but the industry changes really rapidly, and it's continuous learning. Even at CEO level, I'm continuously learning new softwares, new systems, new way of working. So I always kind of underappreciated how much effort you'd need to put into updating your skills all the time.
Thanks, Gemma. I've just put a message out in our chat just to say, for any other questions anyone might have, feel free to drop them in the Q&A below. I imagine we'll be getting started soon with the interview itself between Lauren and Gemma. But yeah, as we go through, don't worry, we can save them till the end, so you've not lost the opportunity. But at the minute, it doesn't look like there's any other bits from anyone in the audience.
I think we're nearly at time, so I think we'll get started, and I'll do a little introduction, if that's okay, Gemma and Lauren, and you're ready.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So next up, we're delighted to have an interview with Gemma Brown. Gemma is the co-CEO of Dovetail Games, which if you've joined us before now, you'll have heard a little bit about. And she's also the co-director of Women in Games, which I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about as we go through the interview. For those of you that weren't on the previous talk, Dovetail Games is a worldwide and award-winning company known for immersive simulation and digital tabletop games. Gemma's going to talk to us a little bit about her career journey to company leadership, and also her passion for supporting women across the game sector. And she's going to be interviewed by Lauren Hunt, who is one of our own from Access Creative. So Lauren is our course leader for Games Art at Access Creative College in Lincoln. And she also works on a commission basis in her specialism, which is in animation and special effects. So thank you both for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to Lauren to get started with the interview.
Hello. Hi, Gemma. I just want to make sure you can hear me first thing.
Okay.
Awesome. So first question, I know you said you were going to a little bit answer before it, but I'll still give it to you anyway. Can you tell us a little about your journey into the games industry and how your career evolved into a leadership role to become the co-CEO of Dovetail Games?
Yeah, I would like to say a lot of luck more than focused judgment, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call that are watching wanted to go into games. It was never on my career trajectory. It wasn't something that was discussed at school. I had a house. I grew up with a house full of girls and women, so we had a Game Boy, and that was it, and it was shared between me and my siblings. So it was never an industry that I knew about, but I wish I did, because I absolutely love it, and it's somewhere that I feel like is a home. My background is HR. I left, I dropped out of college. I probably shouldn't say that. Please stay at college and do get your exams. But it wasn't for me, and I wanted to work, and fell into HR at my previous place, actually. I love organising and process and doing all that part. And so my boss at the time was like, oh, well, you need to get a qualification. So I've got my CIPD in HR, and then a recruiter phoned me up and said, "Oh, there's this little trained software company in Chatham that needs a HR department. They're 30 people, and they just need someone to help sort them out." I was like, "Oh, okay, that sounds really interesting." Come over and got the job, and wanted to learn all of the different aspects of everybody's job. So interviewed and met with every single person. With 35 people at the time, so it was really easy to do. Learned about art, about gameplay, about engineering, about programming, about data, about licensing, and just my world was opened up at that point. And thought, this is really a place I want to be. It's got that creative side as well as that process side. Never imagined that I'd be running the studio sort of 13 years on. And the people and the passion that they have for the games we make is infectious, and that's one of the key things. Like, I think you have that's different from any other industry that I've had interactions with is the passion for the product that you have, even with train simulation and board games. You may not love the subject, but there'll be elements of it that you can draw on. I'm not a train enthusiast, but I love the passion and the enthusiasm from our subject experts at work.
Awesome, thank you so much. What a really well thought out answer. What does your role of co-CEO involve? What's the biggest decisions that you're responsible on a sort of day-to-day basis?
So as co-CEO, so I my other co-CEO, Rob, is on the development side, and I'm on the publishing and business commercial side. But we've worked together for 12 years, so we have a nice balance with each other. But overall, we're responsible for the direction that the company is heading in. Our sole remit is to make sure that the company succeeds long term, and that we have the right people in the right place at the right time. And that everybody knows what our vision is, what our mission is, what our goals are, and making sure that the decisions we make today don't impact us detrimentally in 5-10 years' time. So it's much more longer term, but there are also opportunities that we announced Thomas and Friends game yesterday for release on March 17th, and there will be some sort of firefight. There's always firefighting, there's always something that goes wrong. It's just how it happens, and so there'll be day-to-day decisions that we'll have to jump in, but mostly it's making the right decisions at the right time, and giving confidence to the company that we're heading where we need to.
Thank you so much. What skills do you think are most important for young people who want to be in the games industry?
I think people assume that it's going to be coding or art or those technical skills, and as I said earlier, everything develops really rapidly, and the technical skills that you needed 13 years ago are different today, and it will be different next week. And with the advancement of AI and all of that stuff, it's important that we stay on top of it. So mainly it's about problem solving, because there are many. It's about working well with others, collaboration. Dovetail's very collaborative, but we're hybrids, so we only have a very small group of people that are in the office, and mainly it's people work from home. And that means you have to be really intentional about your communication, and you can't sit there and wait for people to come to you with things. But if you're in the office, you'll tend to see that someone's at lost or needs some support. At home, we can't see that. We don't know that, so you have to be intentional with what you need. I always say we employ adults, and we expect you to be in charge of your own career. We'll give you a framework, but we need you I'll give you all the opportunities you need to step into them. So always encourage, and we'll always have open door. We'll have a coffee with anyone at any point, and want people to take that up.
I'm very happy that, like, you mentioned the creative thinking sort of aspect of it, you know, thinking outside the box, problem solving. This is something that as an educator in games, I'm really happy to hear, because I'm always pushing to my learners, like, I can't solve everything for you when you're out there. You need to figure out, how can I solve this? And so I'm really happy you mentioned not only the creative, you know, the art skills are important, but also problem solving and being your own person is also very, very important.
Exactly.
Alongside your CEO role, you're also the co-director of Women in Games. Could you tell us more about your experience as a woman in the industry, and why is representation and inclusion such an important issue within the games industry?
Okay, so when I started, it was clear that networking and presence was going to be an important part, and I didn't like public speaking. I didn't like networking. I went to develop. My first games industry event was Develop in Brighton, and it's really overwhelming. When it's very packed, cramped space. It's loud. All of the business is done in the pub, in the bar area, and it just wasn't very welcoming. And I actually bumped into the CEO in the toilets of Women in Games, and she was just like, "You okay?" I was like, "No, I just don't really think this is for me. I don't know why I'm here." But she's like, "Oh, you know, we've got a lunch on the seafront. Come to that and meet others." And it was lovely. And it was mixed people were there. It was very welcoming. It was a bit more of a relaxed pace. You were able to meet with people, and from that point, she was like, this is what we want to do as a not-for-profit. We want to address the balance in the industry. Still now, women are, there's no set figure, right? But 25 to 30%. 30% is on the high mark. The average is around 22, 25%. When I started at Dovetail, I was the third woman there, and we're at 30% now, which I'm really proud of. But it is tough, and it's obviously we have the online toxicity and harassment at the edge, the large edge, and then we have micro aggressions towards women in the workplace that we have and we face. Overall, I've had a small handful of direct discrimination due to gender. On the whole, it's been very welcoming and everything else. But it's clear that there is still a need for a more balanced industry. Women play 50%. 50% of women are players. 50% of women in the world on average. Yeah, 25, 30% most. Make the games, create the games, mainly sit on business support roles. So really trying to make pathways. My role at Women in Games as co-director, I'm also ambassador director, and we have 2,600 ambassadors across the globe who take action in their local community to support girls and women into the industry. And we need boys and men to join us on that journey as well.
I was actually talking to my learners about, Women in Games and what that would look like, and how they should be try to push for that change as well. I course lead games art. I have a majority, female learners, and they don't always necessarily see that when they look at games that they're interested in. They tend to only see, male developers, male artists recognized. You don't hear about the women in games as much as you do the men, and they always get a bit disheartened by that. So I'm really happy to have you here. My own learners are somewhere in this building watching this themselves, and I think it'll be really inspiring for them to be able to see, oh, there are women out there, there's women CEOs out there, and there was, you said 2,000 women who are ambassadors as well, who do care and do want to see women being pushed forward in this way within this industry that is male dominated, but majority of the people who go to university for games are women. The majority of people who graduate from animation courses are also women. That's just not quite reflected in the industry yet, but
No,
it's
but
really
it will come through.
it will come through, yes. What advice would you give to young women who are considering a career in gaming but may not see as many people like themselves in senior roles like yourself?
There are more senior women coming up and through. So Frontier, Joe Cook is the CEO at Frontier. You've got Laura Carter, who's the CEO and founder of Trees Please Games, Maria Sayans, Us Two. Debbie Bestwick was Team 17. So that there are there, but I don't think we're visible enough. And like you say, the accolades and the awards tend to be male skewed, and we are on the path to doing that. But join the Women in Games network. We have a very active Discord. We support everyone that's coming through. There are other organisations like Limit Break that do mentorship, Into Games that also do mentorship, and there are plenty of opportunities out there. You need to seek them out.
Yeah, on my side of this as well, the best way I think you need to support other women in games as well. If you want to see more women out there, you need to buy and download women-led games and opportunities. So that's the main way to do it. The games industry is constantly evolving. What trends or changes are you most excited about right now?
I'm really excited about where AI can take us in terms of really removing the repetitive work, and so artists and creatives can focus on the creative element. So I know AI has a bit of a bad rep in some pockets of the industry, but it's been around. So I was at the UK Awards last night, and there was a professor there who got a Hall of Fame award, and he wrote a book about AI in 1985. So AI has always been there in some aspects. At Dovetail, we used to create all of the trees individually by hand, and then we adopted Speed Tree, and when we brought fishing in, we took Speed Tree in, and that was fantastic because you could put foliage everywhere and change it, and the artists were like, fantastic, now I've got time to focus on the areas that I want to. So I think if you use and lean into AI as a tool to improve, it's not going to go away. I'm looking for people that are actively learning and leading on those elements. How can we be more efficient, faster, and get good quality products out of AI? I don't want our games to be made fully out of AI. They have to. It's a tool to support efficiency. Yes.
I always say that to my learners as well. It's a tool, and it's not going to go away. It's just getting bigger and bigger. You see stuff around it all the time. What you can do is learn how to utilize it in a way that doesn't take away your personality. An AI cannot take away your creative spirit, who you are as a person. Yeah. What it can do is make your life a little bit easier with organization as well. It's such a useful tool just to organize your day, especially if you use like freelance developers, or as you said, the majority of your the people who work with you work from home remotely. Organizing your day can be really hard, especially for creative people. Yeah. And using AI to do that would be a really good thing. And I said, don't be afraid of it, embrace it, because I don't really see it taking away people's creative jobs, because it can't think of creative solutions like that sometimes. So
and I've listened to the art of, for artists, the art of craft and the mastery it takes, and the years it takes to master your craft. I haven't seen any AI concept art where I think, oh, that's better. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's not gonna. Maybe it eventually will. And there are some interesting games companies out there like 1066 that are creating games, full games with AI. But like you say, it's not going away, and we can't hide from it either. And it's always been there. So it's about embracing it. But I think that's the most interesting step. Handhelds, and one of the tech talks yesterday was about AI eyewear, and how games will eventually go to there. Like, we've now got cloud gaming, so you can play pretty much anywhere. I've got the Xbox ROG, and I've been playing our games on handheld, where you're like, well, our games are so CPU heavy that how's it fitting on a handheld device and playing absolutely fine? It's great. So I think we'll see a lot more sizes of different screens and portability with our games.
If you could give one piece of advice to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
Probably find the games industry earlier. In there, at 16, you don't want to listen, you don't want advice, and you think you know it all. And I think it's at that age, have fun, enjoy your life. You've got social media, don't do anything stupid that sits there and follows you around. Yeah, go and live your life until you have all the responsibilities of an adult.
That's great advice, honestly. Yeah, live your life. I always say to my learners, go and live your life first before they're always so worried about AI and everything going on and how am I going to get a job? I was like, you need to live your life first before you go and think about those sort of things.
There's so much pressure. I have 22-year-old, 21-year-old twins, a 17-year-old and 12-year-old, and they're all sorts of pressure on them and what I did have growing up. So yeah, just don't fear your future and don't be paralysed by what could happen. Just live in the moment and enjoy being young and youthful and skin that doesn't sag and everything else that starts going north. But yeah.
Thank you so much. I think Anita's have we got more questions? Because these are the questions I was given.
We do actually have one that has trickled through whilst the interview has been going. So it's just going back, I think, to Gemma, when we first sort of talked about advice and things for experience and talking about the importance of connections, networking. So this question is an anonymous question from somebody on the call that has said, networking feels quite scary. Do you have any advice?
It is scary.
Very, very true. It definitely does feel daunting at times.
Sometimes you have to do things even if you're scared of them, and that's the only way to do it. Like I've had hypnotherapy, I've had coaching, I've had everything to get over public speaking, and yesterday I stood up in front of 450 people and presented, and it's not always easy. And I was speaking to others, and there was another woman who was on a panel, and she's like, "Oh God, I'm really nervous." And I'm really nervous. And you're like, "Yeah, okay, but we're still going to do it." Take a deep breath. So if you're in person, here's my tips. If you're in person at an in-person event and you're nervous, there will be other people that are nervous. So look to the edges and find someone else that's standing by themselves and talk about the weather, your journey there or something. Keep it brief and move on. Have your LinkedIn, if you've got LinkedIn, have your LinkedIn QR code on your phone so you can connect and do that. If you join the careers event, I need to have sent you the logo, the link to the registration. There is a networking function, and it is super scary because you're sat at your computer and you press a button and you match with someone for 3 minutes, and I'm nervous of doing it, but I always have a really great time. So it's like a plaster, you've just got to rip it off and you've just got to do it. Most people find it nerve-wracking, most people find it scary, but it is the way to get connections and to find out what's going on. Unfortunately, there's no easier way to do it and you can't avoid it.
Ripping the plaster off. I love that analogy, Gemma. I think that's very true. And even as someone with a non-games background myself, I'm a marketing manager here at Access, and having been in different industries, it is scary. And 16, 17-year-old me doing my apprenticeship, going into some of these events, and you've got people who are a lot more experienced than myself, it's scary. But one thing I think, I don't know, is it worth, Gemma, for anyone on the call who's obviously new to networking, like bringing along maybe some questions that they have might help get the ball rolling, I guess, with
I've watched TED Talks. I can't remember his name, there's a guy on TikTok that does great tips and here's the questions to prepare, here's how to hold yourself, you take a deep breath. I find that what I used to do was not breathe. And then that would add to the panic. So you're not breathing and your body then starts panicking, and then you start sweating and you start getting hot and you start going into anxiety mode. So breathe. Yes, like Natasha, have a couple of questions ready and have your exit ready as well.
Thanks, Gemma.
Fab. I have put, Gemma, thank you for sending that link. I've put it in the chat, so hopefully people can see it.
Perfect.
Pick it up from there, but we will also circulate it after today as well, so that people have access to that. Thank you so much for sharing it.
I'm always happy for people to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and always open for having a coffee or a call, or reach out to me if you're at the careers event as well.
Encouraging some networking with yourself, though, even though you don't enjoy it that much.
I've got used to it now. It's not as fear-inducing, but it does take practice, and it does take time.
I really like the advice around preparing some questions in advance, and I think what I find in life is you'll always find some people that really like to talk about themselves.
Yes.
So if you're nervous about talking about yourself, just prepare some questions. Find one of those people. And usually they've got interesting stories, so it'll be something that you'll learn as you go along through it as well. Do we have any final questions, Natasha, that's come in?
Nothing else at the moment, but I suppose, just for Lauren as well, obviously, as one of our staff here at Access, maybe, I don't know, is there anything that's kind of sparked further ideas, thoughts off the back of what Gemma said that you want to add? I just want to give you the opportunity as well.
Thank you. The biggest thing that I'm interested in as a fellow woman in games is just tell us a little bit more about women in games. How can young women get involved in that? You said you had so many ambassadors. Is there a website, a disc? I know you said there was a Discord. Is there anything else they can do to get involved?
Yeah, so on our website is a link to join as an individual ambassador. It's free to join. You don't have to be in the industry, but you need to have a pathway that you're in, so your course is that you're there. And through that, we're supported by Keyword Studio, so they are partners with us on the programme, and we have quarterly meetings with ambassadors where we give you resources, and we help. The objective of an ambassador is to be visible in their local space, basically, and connect with others. So as those coming into the industry, you can help support others coming in, or connect with other women. And we have male ambassadors and non-binary ambassadors as well. We're in 109 countries, so we're all over.
It's really positive to hear that you also have, non-binary and ambassadors as well, and male, really embracing, it's not about one over the other, it's equality, and really
Exactly.
happy to hear that.
The only way we change the dynamics is all working together. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Gemma.
Not a problem, thank you.
I know you're very busy, so thank you so much for giving up your time to join us.
I appreciate it. It's been very good. Thank you.
We have got our next speaker who is set up. So we have got Aran Everitt, who is joining us next. Aran, can you hear and see us, Aran, okay?
I don't know, it's up to you.
Yeah,
Perfect. I don't turn it up.
It's all good, Barry. I got it.
All right, okay. And then
hello.
We've got Aran under the name Barry.
Don't worry about my alter ego.
Brilliant. So I know you're on Barry's laptop with us today, but thank you so much for joining us. I think we're dual presenting. I didn't know we could do that. I'll take that on in a second. But Aran, you're a sound designer at Dambuster Studios, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Joining us today, and you're going to talk to us a little bit about your journey to your current role, and a little bit about what went right and maybe what didn't go so right along the way.
Yeah, totally.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I will stop sharing and let you get started. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries at all. Is everything coming through all right?
Yep, I can see everything. Natasha, I'm sure you can as well.
Cool.
I can indeed.
Brilliant.
Sweet. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Aran. I'm a sound designer at Dambuster Studios. Just a little bit about me. I've been a sound designer at Dambuster Studios for about 4 years now. And then I was previously in QA at Dambuster, which was for about 6-ish months. And I guess the kind of agenda of this is just to kind of go over some retrospectives of my time in, sort of university, and then what I did right and what I did wrong to get into the industry. And hopefully it'll be some informative stuff for everybody. So I actually started my journey into games at Confetti in 2016, and then in 2018, I went on to the BSc Games course. So just a little bit of kind of information. There's not really a huge amount to say, I suppose, about my time at Confetti, but the main thing was I hadn't really decided what I wanted to do, and I'd say that this is really important. Try to think about what discipline you want to focus on, and kind of make that your priority. For me, I was very much kind of focused between audio and also between 3D modeling, and I love both sides of it, but I needed to kind of focus on one, and I could have made it a bit more audio focused, and I think that would have helped me a lot more. I did try to incorporate a lot of my kind of audio abilities and my audio interests into the modules in third year. So I did a dissertation that was on music and kind of the impact on player performance in a video game. I also did a sort of technical implementation of audio for the engines module that I had as well, which was my first introduction really to kind of implementing audio. And I'll talk more about this shortly, but it's a very important thing to have that kind of background as well at the technical side. I also can't stress this enough, but I could have easily done 10 times the portfolio work that I actually ended up doing. You know, I wasn't employed at the time, I was a student, and compared to now, I had unlimited time. And so I really, really wish I would have spent more time working on my portfolios, because it develops your skills is the main thing from that. So spend more time on your portfolios, please. I also could have polished my website too. I think it was a little bit sloppy and it wasn't formatted that well. So I could have spent a little more time on that. And I also wasn't particularly active in the kind of dev community at all. I didn't really go to any game dev meets. So I'd urge anybody to, find any meets locally to you. And if you're able to go, please do, because they are, a wealth of information and you meet some amazing people. I also didn't really post online either. So I'd really suggest kind of being more active in these communities online. So a bit of advice about portfolios. This is very generalized and there aren't really like any sort of rules regarding this. So a couple of do's on portfolios: just work. As I said already, like, you've got so much time, you need to just spend more time than you think you need on your portfolios, because when you get to the position that I'm in, you won't have that time and you can't really put the work in. And even in QA, I didn't really have a lot of time because it was a full-time job. So I'd urge you to just kind of work as much as you possibly can on your portfolio. I can't stress it enough. Also, keep your portfolio up to date, relevant to the role, and concise. I think with games in particular, what a lot of AA and AAA studios, like the large scale studios, what they want to see is they want to see that you are tailoring your portfolios to them, to their specific aesthetic or their style, or, even in some cases, like the massive studios, like the really big ones out there, they want to see portfolios that are specific to them, where people are effectively trying to create content as if it was for that studio. So try to kind of keep it relevant to that sort of role that you're doing. And also keep your work centralized in one place too. For any artists that are watching this, ArtStation, of course, is the place. But for audio, there wasn't really a place, and I don't really think there still is. So I just made a website, and that was my kind of my option at the time. I think websites are much better for audio because, as I mentioned at the bottom of the page here, like YouTube, it compresses audio and it doesn't give anyone watching like a representative experience, right? So a website for me made a lot of sense, and there might be something out there that's more appropriate for audio now, but I'd suggest a website on Wix or something. Mine was just a free one. Also, show your best work first. I think I fell into this trap a little bit where every time I made a new portfolio piece, I would put that first, so it's the first thing that anybody would see. But newest work isn't always the best work that you do, because sometimes you might be willing to take a risk and try something a bit unique, which is what I was doing a lot of the time. I was trying to do sort of sound design that was outside of my kind of comfort zone. And my comfort zone in sound design is the kind of realistic, cinematic, first person, action game kind of vibe. And I tried some things that were very much outside of that realm, and I'd put that kind of content first, and it wasn't my best work. It wasn't representative of what I do. So try to keep your best work first. And as I mentioned a bit earlier, show off technical implementation. I think this is a really, really useful skill that a lot of people lack. and it's what we're looking for in the industry. You're going to be using, game engines half the amount of time that you're working. In my case, I probably do more implementation work than I actually do creating assets and sound design itself. So I'd say, get to grips with game engines and also middleware as well, which it's a whole other kettle of fish, but I use Wise personally for my middleware. And it is basically a tool that you put your sounds into, and then that is how those sounds are interacting with the game itself. And half of the work happens in there. That's where all of the magic really takes place. So learning the technical side and then showing that off is really important. Also, a little bit about websites, if you decide to make one, is avoid menu diving and lots of clicks. This is like really frustrating, if you're kind of reviewing someone's website or portfolio and you have to go through like 4 menus to actually get to the content they've done. So try to keep it, easily accessible. And also mobile formatting as well. Consider that, if you want to show somebody a game dev meet your portfolio, if you're showing them on your phone, you want it to look really, really pretty and you want it to have functionality, right? So keep that in mind. And also, as I mentioned too, be considerate of how media is stored, because certain platforms, in the case of audio primarily, will compress and not sound too good. A couple of don'ts, apologies for the rude word there. Don't kind of put a lack of effort. Yeah, I'm allowed to say it. Oh, don't half-arse your work. It kind of goes without saying there. And also, I would say in audio in particular, try to avoid being too broad. I've seen a lot of very generalist portfolios, which are kind of, a little bit of audio and then a little bit of sort of, composition and maybe a little bit of like game design and that kind of thing. And it's brilliant. It's really cool that you're able to do that. And if you're an indie dev, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. That's really useful to have all of those skills. But in AA and AAA, studios aren't really looking for people that do everything. They're looking for a specific role to fill. And so in a way, it kind of shows you're not really committed to your craft if you're kind of showing everything off. And anecdotally, I actually had a meeting with I believe he was a character artist at an outsourced studio. And it was a portfolio review. And I had my artwork on my website. And that's why we got matched together for the portfolio review. And he asked me, he said, "Do you want to be an artist?" And I said, no, not really. I kind of want to do audio. And then he said, "Take it off your website then. Don't show your art off. Be proud of it, but don't show it off." And that immediately helped me. It immediately, potentially reduced my options, but it certainly helped me kind of focus in on the right people in the industry. And also a little pet peeve of mine is try not to say aspiring before your discipline on your website or your social media. If you've done sound design, you're not aspiring to do sound design, you've done sound design. It just looks a bit amateur. So I'd keep that in mind. You're a sound designer, you're an artist, you do it. So you're not aspiring to do that kind of thing. A few considerations as well, and this kind of applies to, I suppose, applying to roles. It's a political game and it is a really savage industry, to be completely honest. And so the best sort of tool that you've got is to tailor your work to the company. It's be as specific as you can. And also it's the same with your CV and cover letter. Tailor it to the company, be specific. It's what they're looking for. There's no real sort of golden standard for portfolios either. I think it really varies with studio to studio and person to person. I've honestly seen some portfolios that are 20 seconds long, like sound reels that are 20 seconds long, and I've seen some that are 5 minutes long. And I would say there's not really a specific number that you need to aim for. I went for 1 minute and that worked out for me. That was, the kind of a good length, I suppose, to kind of fit all of my stuff in. And just kind of a quick little breakdown, I suppose, about my portfolio, my show reel. It was 4 clips from 4 different video games. And I had essentially taken these clips, I'd recorded them, they were 15 or so seconds each, and I'd stripped out the audio from them. So I'd removed the audio file, and I'd loaded these clips into a software called Reaper, which is the workstation that I use. And I'd loaded them in, and I just started kind of putting my own sounds, my own recordings against these videos. And that's kind of a really good place to start with this kind of thing. We kind of call it like linear passes. It's a really powerful way of kind of conveying your ability as a sound designer. So I was doing a lot of that kind of thing. And for me, it just turned out to be a minute long. That was what I landed on. I would also say you need to compare yourself to work against the AA and AAA landscape. And I know it's comparison is a thief of joy, but in this case, you kind of have to. You really have to compare yourself, because if you don't, you may not end up getting the standard that you're looking for. So compare to AAA portfolios and also AAA games in general. Try to understand what makes these games sound so good and what makes them look so good, which is a bit of a research task, I suppose. I guess as well, I've heard mixed things about this, but the general consensus I get is that a CV and a cover letter will outweigh a good portfolio. It's not always the case for every studio, but most of the time from the people I've spoken to, it is the case. So if you've got a really strong CV and cover letter, which show that you've researched the company and you understand the company, and it shows that you care about the role, that will basically give you a small advantage. Or maybe a big advantage, depending on how good your CV and your cover letter are. And also iterate on your work as well. It's something that I didn't do until a lot later, but it's kind of coming back around to my old portfolios and listening to what I did and kind of what I could have done better, and then taking the skills I developed from doing portfolios and then putting it back in, and then having a sort of solid comparison to reference. So that's something that you can do when you've developed your skills and you've got a handful of portfolio pieces, like a handful of clips that you've worked against. You can kind of go back and look at that. And so after, I think probably 5 months after I graduated, maybe less, I had a QA role pop up at Dambuster Studios. I'd applied for a load of audio jobs in the industry, and I got rejected from every single one. And I don't think a single one of them gave me feedback. I think maybe one of them gave me some very loose feedback, but it was a bit disheartening. And this QA role opened up at Dambuster, and my friend Dan Fairchild was already employed at Dambuster. I'll talk about him in a second, but he effectively referred me, and then I got the job. So it does sound like nepotism a little bit, but in a way, that's kind of the angle that you have to leverage in a way. So Dan isn't just my friend. We went to college and university together, and we worked on, I think, 5 group projects and then 3 game jams and maybe 2 personal projects together. And so it wasn't just that we were friends, it's that we had an actual rapport of working together. So that was why he was able to refer me with such a strong referral. So I urge you, talk to people in your classes, get to know people, be friends with people. If you're really set on being a solo indie dev, that's fine. But it's so beneficial to meet people and be friends with people, but then work with them on projects as best as you can, even if it's just personal and it's just kind of outside of sort of education. That will help you. It's like they help you, you help them, and that's how you get into the industry. I also had a pretty strong passion for the sort of history. So the game that Dambuster worked on at the time was Dead Island 2. And I love Dead Island 1 and I love Dead Island Riptide. And I, for some reason, thought that Dambuster made those games, but they didn't. So I started researching Dambuster and kind of finding out about the history of the company and what they were before they were Dambuster. And then I brought that to my interview that I had. And that went down really well. They appreciated that I'd put the time in to research them. And I also, sort of personally aligned with the team. We just had a really good banter in the interview. And I think this is, specific person to person, studio to studio. You can't really control that. But with studios like Dambuster, the size that they are, I think it's really nice to kind of have this personal kind of connection to people. And it just, it's more of the studio culture side of it and the studio life. So that's always, a really, really nice positive when you've got people at the studio that just kind of work really well for you as a person. And then after, I think 6 months I had an audio role pop up at Dambuster. So this role was externally hiring only, so it wasn't an internal hire. This popped up and I want to say I was fairly ready because I kind of knew this was coming up. I anticipated it a little bit. So maybe I had the edge there. But a couple of things that I think really helped me get this role was, first of all, my QA experience. I know a lot of people look at QA and they brush it off and they don't want to go into QA, but this, in my opinion, is one of the most undervalued roles in the industry. The skills I learned from it, I apply them to my day-to-day work. And I think because I was in QA at Dambuster, I was working directly with the audio team to debug, their audio issues. And that in itself is already one thing that someone in an audio team is looking for when they're hiring someone. So I already had that skill right there. And a more general sort of thing, I already had the knowledge of debugging and the systems that we use at Dambuster, and I'd just worked with the whole studio. I'd been in direct communication with people, and that I think massively helped. And I also as well made a bit of a name for myself. I used to go to the pub a lot. I'm not saying that you need to, but I certainly went to the pub far too often. And this is how I actually met the audio team informally and properly got to know them. And in a way, going to the pub with your colleagues is kind of like a mini sort of like team building in a sense. Like I suppose you kind of drop the work agenda and you try not to talk about work too much outside of it, but you're just kind of like socializing with these people who are also in the same industry as you, who you also work with. And so in my case, there was a team that were at the pub a lot, and they had a position that they were wanting to fill. And so I'd already made that social connection with them. And I think that kind of goes to game dev meets as well. You know, if you go to those kinds of things, you've got that connection with people if they're looking for someone. The main sort of improvement that I think I did that helped was my portfolio, CV, and cover letter. So the portfolio, I had put a lot more work into that. I'd polished some of the older stuff that I'd done. And this, from the last point on the slide, actually was because the audio lead at Dambuster, who is my boss now, he kind of was willing and very open and very generous to let me send him my work. And he reviewed it for me and he gave me feedback, and he was quite harsh. But that's just the nature of feedback. You have to learn to take feedback, and I acted on it to what he thought was a really good standard. And that shows that I have the ability to sort of iterate on my work. And this is really important in the industry. I can't stress this enough. When you are working, you know, in any sort of discipline that is involving content creation, you will be told to make something again or change something or tweak something to sort of better meet the vision of the director or the studio. And you have to be able to act on that feedback. And it's a skill in itself. And so I would say, if you get the chance, exploit these opportunities, really exploit them. That aircon is incredibly loud.
I'll turn it off.
If you don't mind, mate.
Yeah.
So in terms of where I am now, I've been in audio at Dambuster for, I think, just shy of 4 years. I was promoted to regular level 2 years ago. And I also shipped Dead Island 2 and both of the expansions. I think, you know, some of the kind of points of this here that I've got on this slide aren't necessarily true to every studio. This is very much a Dambuster sort of vibe, but I thought it would be a nice insight. So my everyday was absolutely varied. There wasn't a specific single thing that I had actually done, you know, every single day consistently. And so it was a mix of creating assets, you know, sound design, right? Making these various assets. It was authoring with the middleware, so putting these sounds into the sort of sound engine that we use. And then it was working in the game engine as well. It was such a mix. And there were also loads of meetings going on, of course, you know, about creative direction. There were team-oriented meetings. There were mixing sessions where we were kind of like listening to the game and sort of, you know, mixing the overall bigger picture of the game together as a team. So it was massively varied. I also had a bit of a mixture of disciplines. So in a bigger studio, you might find that a lot of the time you're focused on one specific thing. But in my case, it was a little more sort of open and a little more sporadic. So I did some cinematic work. I did some environment work. So that's like the ambiances and that kind of content, you know, things like trees and reverbs and the room tones, that kind of thing. I also did some combat design too. So that would have been like the gore sound effects and the impacts and some of the weapon content, and also even some zombie vocalizations. I actually recorded some of my own voice and that kind of thing. And similarly, you know, lots of recording sessions, lots of going out into the field with recorders and just capturing things. I very much recommend that for anyone here who is interested in getting into audio or kind of developing your audio skills. Is just get a cheap recorder and just record, just capture anything. You never know when you're going to need it. And there's still things that I recorded probably 3-4 years ago, which I still haven't used, but they're still there in the library. I also worked with other departments a lot. So this wasn't just internal to audio. This was kind of working with other departments to see their creative vision, such as level designers. So they'd come to us and be like, hey, we want this thing to do this thing. And then we'd have to kind of interpret and translate that and then try to kind of create and iterate to get something to what they wanted. So it was a lot of collaboration. And I can't really speak for how bigger studios work on that. But I think the smaller you get as a studio, all the way down to like, you know, a 2-man team, it's going to be a lot of that, a lot of kind of working in other areas. So that's a good thing to learn as well. And hopefully you'll have some group projects with cross-discipline that you can properly develop in. I also was constantly iterating on my work based on the feedback, as I mentioned. And I also think a little sort of bit of like a sort of magician revealing his tricks is that, realistically speaking, in games, most of the magic comes from the way that it's polished after the fact. So personally, a lot of my sound design was bad. Like, no, not bad, but it just kind of could have been so much better. I can't speak for other people on the team, but mine was absolutely kind of underwhelming in some areas, but we're able to polish that with the game engine and the middleware to make it sound, you know, significantly better. So it's a lot of understanding those kinds of post processes almost to get something to sound or look really nice. And so a couple of kind of closing notes is get yourself out there. You know, as I said, I've said this like 10 times already, is go to dev meets if you can. They pop up all over. There's one that recently started up in Nottingham for anybody in the area called Create Knots, I believe. And so just get yourself to these kinds of things. Be active, talk to people, don't be shy. You know, we're all in it for the same thing. Work on personal projects with friends and peers. Again, can't stress it enough. It's how you develop your skills. It's how you develop communication skills. And it's how you make these connections that are kind of a bit more informal than a network connection, but it's someone that you could probably trust a little more with like a reference or just working with in general, right? And also learn how to act on feedback. Take initiative too. Don't be afraid to just kind of reach out to people in the industry. It's not the case for everybody, but you know, I can personally say if somebody messaged me on LinkedIn or something, I wouldn't be opposed to sort of responding, because I think a lot of the time in the industry, people want to give back because it is such a vicious industry and it's such a small and niche industry, especially in the UK, that people want to give back to that and kind of help the next generation. So, you know, be respectful of people's times, and maybe if people are out there on social media being open about wanting to review people's work, take them up on that opportunity, you know, make these connections and also show passion for your work. I think that kind of just comes naturally. I think for me, my sort of passion lies in my ability to kind of really kind of oversell the scene that I'm working on and to try to put the emotion into it, if that makes sense. Like tell a story through audio. And I think if you get to this level where you can work on a portfolio that is conveying that kind of thing, then, you know, it's going to go a very long way for you. And also, I don't think this will apply to many people at all, but I just wanted to say, leave ego at the door. I've definitely come across a few people who are, you know, maybe a little bit too self-centered, and this is a very kind of, you know, community industry, and this industry is very much built off of each other, and we're all working towards the exact same goal. And so, you know, just kind of have a little bit of dignity if you don't already. With that said, thank you very much. That's been me.
Thank you so much, Aran. I think that was really great. And I think you've reiterated some of the bits that actually some of our other speakers have said as well, around that kind of importance of networking, working with other people as well. And I really liked your advice around the recorder, just getting or even on your phone, just getting a bit of a cheaper.
Even on your phone, absolutely. Like modern phones, they have really good mics built in. Like it may be a bit of a sort of tale, but Skrillex, he apparently records loads of his samples on his iPhone, and some of his music's incredible. So there you go, you know, just get out there.
If it's good enough for Skrillex, then. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a couple of minutes before our next speaker starts. Natasha, do we have any questions that have come in for Aran?
We do, and some of it may well have been rounded off, but just if you wanted to kind of build on it, Aran, to give you the opportunity, and just, yeah, firstly, just to echo what Anita said, thank you so much for your time. And I think personally for me, even as a non, you know, person with a non-games industry background, I'm a marketing manager at Access. I found that really, really interesting, and there's so many key takeaways. And we will be sharing those obviously post the webinar today as well. But in particular, you know, talking about the aspiring and having that written down, like that does obviously, you know, make you look a little bit more amateur maybe. So things like that, you know, maybe simple bits of advice, but particularly for the young people on this call that are just getting started, it's kind of those pitfalls that they can avoid. So that's gratefully received. And then also the other bit just around going back to my notes, there's some of the key bits that I've picked out. I think, yeah, the portfolio and spending more time on that. Like, you know, if you going back to when you said, Aran, wishing about having more time and what you would do differently, I think that's really valuable advice for, again, people in the audience for today. One of the questions that we do have is, so what advice would you give to a young person who wants to work in game audio? I feel like some of that has been definitely covered on this session. But just if you wanted to build on it, I thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I think it's because of the nature of games and game audio in particular, it's an incredibly small community in the UK, to the point where you could probably fit every sound designer who works in the industry in like a single building. You know, it's a very small community, and so the strongest thing that I think you can do, aside from having, you know, a good portfolio and that kind of thing, is having the sort of the initiative to go out and meet people. Because if you meet various people in the industry and you make friends with them, then you've already kind of given yourself a massive advantage. And I would say that really helped me, just because my sort of specific case, as I mentioned, was going to the pub a lot, and it was, you know, kind of like informally networking with the audio team, and even going to these game dev meets where I meet loads of people. And it's honestly so welcome as someone who's in the industry to see students at these dev meets and just talking to them, because it's almost like they've gone out of their way to do this. And I understand, because I used to be terrified. I still am, to be fair. I used to be incredibly terrified of going out to these meets and trying to network, because there's pressure. There's loads of pressure to kind of have this image of yourself, and, you know, to be professional when you're with professionals and stuff. But going to the pub or to, like, you know, game dev meets and stuff, there's not a whole lot of formality there, I think. And it feels a lot more like you're just kind of chatting to people and you're just kind of making friends. And so that's what I would urge, is get involved. There is also a platform called Air Wiggles. I don't use it myself. I've heard I should, but it's kind of like a sort of forum specifically for sound designers. So if you're not on Air Wiggles, I'd say check that out, because there's a community there for you.
Thanks so much, Aran. We just had, just in those sort of 60 seconds or so, another question that's just come through. And it's an anonymous question, someone saying, how would you go about getting your first job in the games industry? So quite a broad question, but if there's anything you want to add to that, I'm sure they'd appreciate it.
It's quite broad. Again, meet people, get to know people. That's a big one, especially if you can meet people at big studios. Keep showing off your work on social media. You know, make sure that you're sort of presenting that to people. Because then they'll see that, you know, I've had a few instances in the past where a couple of sound designers that I look up to had actually, you know, like reacted to my stuff when I was on Twitter, and it just kind of, you know, kind of almost like validates what you're doing in a way, and kind of gets you out there, and it shows that these people do see you. So I think mainly strong portfolio, really strong CV and cover letter that's heavily personalized to the studio, and try to talk to these people if you can. Try to you know, meet them or talk to them on LinkedIn if they allow it, or, you know, go to meets. That's probably what I'd say.
Thank you so much for that, Aran. That's been really, really helpful, and some really great advice for our students that are on the call. So thank you for taking us through your journey. Brilliant. We have our next speaker ready to go. So Josh, you are a sound designer. You're originally from Newcastle upon Tyne.
Yep.
But you are, or you have been living in Helsinki in Finland. Is that where you're joining us from today?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So joining us all the way from Finland, which is great. And you have worked at Cloud Emporium Games and Remedy Entertainment, and you worked on Alan Wake 2, which I believe won a BAFTA, which is absolutely fantastic. And also was my first introduction to knowing that there are BAFTAs for games. I didn't know that before now. So that was a big learning experience for me in talking with you, Josh. So thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, I'll pass over to you if you've got a presentation.
Hello, thanks for coming to watch. My name's Josh Bell. I'm a senior sound designer at Sweet Justice Sound, and before this I worked at studios including Remedy Entertainment and Cloud Imperium Games, and some of the projects I've worked on include Star Citizen, Squadron 42, Alan Wake 2 and FBC Firebreak. And Alan Wake 2 later won the BAFTA Games Award for Audio Achievement in 2024, which was an incredible experience to be a part of. As a sound designer, my job is to help bring the world of a game to life through sound, and that means creating sounds for characters, weapons, environments, user interfaces, and sometimes even more abstract gameplay feedback. The audio team works closely with designers, programmers, and artists to make sure that the sounds support the gameplay and the storytelling. Design is often something players only notice when it's missing. If a game suddenly had no sound effects, the experience would feel very strange and disconnected. But when the sound design is working well, players don't usually think about it directly. It just makes the world feel real and believable. So today I'm going to talk about what sound design for video games actually is, in case anyone doesn't know, how sound gets into a game, what a typical day working in game audio looks like, and how I personally got into the industry. Yeah, most people play games every day without thinking too much about how the sound actually works. Some people even think it just magically generates itself, but almost everything you hear in a game has been deliberately designed by a sound designer. So what exactly is game sound design? So sound design is the process of creating and implementing all of the non-musical audio in a game. This includes things like footsteps when a character walks, weapon sounds when something fires, creature vocalizations, the sound of the environment like wind or rain, and user interface stuff like menu clicks. If you imagine a game world and remove the sound entirely, the experience suddenly feels very flat and lifeless. Sound design is there to add weight, feedback, and atmosphere. It tells the player what is happening in the world and often provides important gameplay information. For example, the sound of footsteps behind you might tell you that an enemy is approaching, or the sound of a weapon might help you recognize exactly what weapon that player is using so you can get the jump on them. It's not just about making things sound cool, it also helps the player understand the game world. So before sounds can be implemented into a game, they first need to be actually created. And one way sound designers get sounds is through field recording. This means actually going out into the real world with microphones and recording interesting sounds that can later be transformed through the whole game audio pipeline to get it into the game. For example, designers might record footsteps on different surfaces like gravel, wood, or metal. They might record mechanical objects to create sci-fi weapon sounds, or just environmental recordings to build the ambience for a game world's sound. Sound designers, importantly to note, sound designers don't always record everything they use themselves. There's also professional sound recordists whose full-time job it is to travel around the world and capture high-quality recordings of different sounds. And they then release these as sound libraries, which studios can license and use as building blocks for their own sound design. And using libraries allows sound designers to work more efficiently and focus their time on the actual designing and layering rather than recording every single element themselves. And although they generally, I think, less commonly used by most sound designers, you can also use synthesizers to make layers for sounds. So once sounds have been recorded or sourced, they are usually edited and designed inside of a digital audio workstation, often called a DAW or DAW. Tools like Reaper, which is by far the most common digital audio workstation used in game audio, allows sound designers to layer recordings together, adjust timing relative to each layer, and apply effects to each layer. And this is the foundation of what we would call creative sound design. For example, if we want to design a weapon sound, we might combine a recording of metal impacts, mechanical clicks, low frequency sounds, actual guns, of course, to create the game version of a gunshot, which sounds satisfying to the player. And the DAW is where all of this creative sound design happens before anything gets into the game itself. So a single sound effect is often made from multiple layers, as I said. A gunshot, this gunshot I'm going to show you will have mechanical sounds from the gun itself, a sharp gunshot for the actual shot, some low frequency thump to give it a bit of extra weight, and a tail or an echo, some would say, to represent the sound traveling through the environment. And by actually layering different recordings together, sound designers create something much more detailed and expressive than just one single recording could.
What might be good to delve into, if you've just got a moment, Josh, and if it's okay, is maybe just kind of like your inspiration. Like, where do you kind of, obviously you've gone into some of the kind of bits that make up the sound, so the mechanical aspects, the thump, but yeah, kind of just where your personal inspiration. I know you talked about people obviously go abroad and stuff to capture sounds and things like that, so I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Depends on what the game is. I mean, you can inject a lot of your own personality into game sound design for specific things, but really we're servants of the vision of the overall game. So really the inspiration for what a gun in a game sounds like is what gun it is and what the game is. It's just kind of, you can add, people have their own personal styles and stuff, but generally it's a team thing, and that's kind of defined by the game as a whole, I guess.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Have you got a particular favorite project that you've worked on?
It has to be Alan Wake 2, yeah, because it's the first one I was on from start to finish, and obviously it was very, very well received as well. So yes, so one of the biggest differences between games and film is how audio behaves. Obviously, film and television are so TV and film are film and TV are linear media. That means the sound always plays back exactly the same way every time someone watches it, a bit like being a passenger on a train following a fixed track. Everything happens in a predetermined order, so the audio can simply play along a timeline. And then, of course, we have games, and games are different because they're interactive, and everything what happens is driven by the player. And this is more like being a driver of a car than a passenger on a train. The audio system has to react constantly to what the player is doing. The player might run into a room, turn around, fire a weapon, or trigger an event in any order, and the audio system needs to respond dynamically to all that. The difference between linear media and interactive media is one of the biggest challenges in game audio. In film, sound designer knows exactly when an explosion will happen, exactly how it should sound, and in a game, the player might be standing right next to the explosion, or they might be far away. They might be indoors when it happens, or outside in an open space. All of these factors change how the sound should behave. So because of this, sound designers don't just design individual sounds, we design systems that allow sounds to adapt to different situations. This one might not work as well. So yeah, we'll watch a gameplay video without sound, and then we can probably skip this, but yes.
I guess it's a bit like, yeah, if you have the TV on, things with the sound down, you just don't get the same reaction to things, do you? And it'll be very similar to games, but even more, as you mentioned, because of the kind of dynamic nature of it.
Yeah, because it's not just actions that you see on screen not responding with sound, it's things you're actually telling the game to do that don't respond.
If anyone hasn't watched, I quite often, I really don't like horror films, but my other half does. And if you watch it with the sound off, I find that it's a lot less scary.
It's almost even funny sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So it does really, it creates the atmosphere. It's really, really key.
Yeah. Yeah, so without audio feedback, it's harder to understand what's happening in the game world. You lose the feeling of weight when you shoot weapons or when things collide, or you lose a lot of important gameplay information like where enemies are relative to you. Let's get this one. Yeah, so the difference is extremely dramatic. Sound adds impact to actions and helps the player understand what is happening, helps build the atmosphere of the world, and environmental sounds make spaces feel larger or smaller. And when all of these elements are combined together, the world feels suddenly so much more alive. So now let's actually talk about how sound gets into a game. So a common question people ask is whether to be a game sound designer, you also need to learn audio implementation. And my answer is yes. Implementation is a core part of the job. Sound files won't play until they are connected to systems inside of the game. And also the system that you design to play back the sound can affect how you design it in the digital audio workstation in the first place. In that process of connecting sounds to gameplay systems we call audio implementation. When sounds are implemented in a game world, they exist as what we call audio emitters. And you can imagine these like tiny invisible speakers placed throughout the environment. For example, a machine in a factory might have an emitter producing a mechanical sound. A waterfall will have an emitter producing the sound of the rushing water. To hear these sounds, the game also has something called an audio listener, and the listener represents effectively the player's ears inside of the virtual world. So as the player moves through the environment, the listener moves with them and picks up sounds from the emitters nearby. One of the most important behaviors in a game audio system is how sounds change depending on distance. In the real world, sounds behave differently depending on how far away they are. If a sound happens right next to you, it will be loud and detailed, and if the same sound happens far away, it becomes quieter and often loses some of that trebly detail in the high end. In game engines, we can simulate this behavior just using something called distance attenuation, which generally just means the sound gets quieter as it gets further away from the player. Though there are some other techniques we use alongside this. Another video, basically this is showing the sound of, if anyone's played Hunt Showdown, you've got this menu where you can listen to the different guns at different distances. This is just comparing the sound of those guns at different distances. So when you're very close to it, you get all of the like mechanical sound of the trigger, the flint going back, and all of that. And then when you hear it from a distance, it's much more abstract and sort of, I guess I'd describe it as like smeared. You lose a lot of the high end detail. Yeah. So as well as turning it up and down in volume, we also sometimes use different sounds for different distances and blend them based on where the player is. let's look at what an environment might actually contain in terms of sound sources. So this one's not actually as important to have the audio on. So at first glance, this sort of scene might appear very, very quiet and there might not be much detail in it, but when we overlay markers showing the sound emitters that you might find in this kind of space in a game, you see how many individual sound sources might exist in just a single environment like this. There might be emitters for wind, insects, distant traffic, distant people, distant machinery, wind in the trees, rocks falling down a cliff, that kind of thing. So even calm environments like that can contain dozens of sound sources working together to create the final soundscape. But not all sounds in games exist in a 3D world. Some sounds are implemented as what we call 2D sounds. These play directly to the player, directly to the speakers without any bias to left or right speaker to tell you where it's coming from. Music is a common example of this, and also menu sounds, interface sounds are implemented in that way. Because they're not attached to a location in the world, they don't change depending on where the player is standing. Most games will use a combination of 3D and 2D sounds. Once sounds are designed, they're imported into middleware tools such as Wwise or Fmod. You don't need to understand the interface for these yet, you just need to kind of know that they exist. Middleware is what sits between the designed sound files and the game engine, and it allows sound designers to mostly control how sounds behave without having to write complex game code to do this. For example, inside the middleware, we can add variations so that we can, instead of just playing the same gunshot sound over and over again, we can have 10 gunshot sounds that are randomly picked from a bucket. We can blend multiple sound layers together, like the distance switching example earlier. These tools allow sound designers to build flexible systems instead of combinations of static sound effects, I guess. Sounds also need something that tells them when to play. These are called triggers. Triggers come from different gameplay events, so firing the gun might trigger a weapon sound, objects colliding will trigger an impact sound, entering a certain area might trigger an environmental ambience. Animations can trigger sounds such as footsteps when a character's foot touches the ground, and triggers are what connects the game engine to the audio middleware, which is then connected to the speakers. When people hear the term sound designer, they often imagine that it's just one type of job, but in game development there are actually several different roles within the audio team, especially large ones. For example, some people focus more on creative sound design, which is just creating the actual sound effects in the DAW. Others will focus more on technical sound design, which involves building the systems that control how these sounds behave inside the game. As I mentioned earlier, like the design of the playback system can affect how you design them, so it's important that these people work very, very closely together. There's also dialogue designers who work specifically with dialogue and voice recordings. Large studios will often also have dedicated audio programmers who build the tools and technology that allow the audio systems to function inside the game engine. And of course, then there's composers who write the music for the game. Depends on the size of the studio. Some of these roles might be separate specializations, and in smaller teams, one person might cover several or all of these. A typical day working as a sound designer can involve a mixture of creative work and technical work. For example, you might start the day editing or designing new sound effects inside a DAW, and then you might, in the afternoon, import them into middleware and connect them up and test them. It's this pretty much the basic gameplay loop of a sound designer is design, implement, test, go back to implement again, test again. Of course, game development is extremely collaborative, and audio teams work closely with many other disciplines. For example, animators help determine the timing of sounds like footsteps, weapon reloads, character movement. Programmers build the systems and the tools that allow us to implement complex audio behaviors. Level designers create the environments where the gameplay happens. And we also work heavily with the narrative team to ensure that the dialogue designers can support the story. Because games, especially AAA games, are such complex projects, communication between different teams is incredibly important, and audio is never in isolation. It's constantly interacting with the rest of the game. So collaboration is a huge part of the job. I think probably the audio team probably has the most teams that they have to be friendly with to be able to find out everything that they need to be able to do their job. Almost done. Yes, so I'll briefly explain how I got into the industry. So I studied music technology at London College of Music and graduated in 2017. I didn't study game audio directly, but got into game audio halfway through my degree. And I then managed to sort of twist my final year as much as possible into being geared towards game audio via my final project, which was like a short Unreal Engine walking simulator where I did all of the audio. During my studies, I spent a lot of time building a portfolio. So for roughly 2 years, I focused heavily on learning middleware tools, redesigning gameplay footage, and building a professional portfolio website. And because I'd already invested that time in preparing my work, I was very, very lucky that when someone already working at Cloud Imperium recommended me, my portfolio was in a shape where I was invited for an interview. So there was a lot of luck and right place, right time involved. But if I wasn't ready for that opportunity, then it would have passed me by. So there I worked on Star Citizen and Squadron 42, designing sounds for ships, weapons, environments, and then later I moved to Finland to work for Remedy on Alan Wake 2 and FBC Firebreak. And now I'm freelance with Sweet Justice Sound Group, so I get to work on a wide variety of different things. I would say networking is extremely important in the game audio industry. It's a very small community, especially in the UK. So many people know each other across studios and have worked at everywhere everyone else has worked and stuff as well. And 2 out of my 3 jobs in the industry so far have been pretty much not being advertised and being directly recommended by someone I've met or worked with before. So getting to know other sound designers can be incredibly valuable. In the UK, there's regular meetups such as the Game Audio London Drinks and Game Audio North, and then there's larger industry events such as Develop Conference in Brighton, which has a dedicated audio day. I wouldn't recommend anyone go out and spend the money for a conference pass to go and watch the actual audio talks, because the most valuable part of Develop Conference really is just going to all the audio social events where you actually meet people. There's also some great online learning resources created by the community, such as gameaudiolearning.com, put together by Greg Lester. So if anything I've said today interests you and you want to look into game audio, then that's definitely the place to start. And then when it comes to portfolio stuff, there's the Real Talk Twitch stream archive, where very experienced sound designers review the portfolios, websites, and showreels of newcomers and give advice directly to them about how to improve them. Yeah, and of course, for anyone interested in pursuing this career, building a strong portfolio is essential. Studios receive hundreds of applications for audio roles when they go live. And to stand out, to stand out, you need 3 things very, very strong, which is a short showreel, a portfolio website, and technical breakdowns showing how your work functions inside a game audio system. If you go back and look at the resources on the previous page, they go through this in a lot more detail. Yeah, studios want to see not that you can just make cool sounds, but that you can also make your cool sounds work inside of a game engine. And because of how collaborative the job is, they want to hear you talk about your work as well, so they can get a gauge of your personality and see that you might be a cool person to work with. Yeah. That's it. Thank you for listening.
That was brilliant, Josh. Thank you so much for that. I'm sorry that your audio didn't work of all the presentations. But if you're happy, we can share that presentation out with everyone that's on the call afterwards, so they can get a bit more of a sense of the difference and the kind of dynamic nature of games, which is something
I can put the transcript in the slide notes as well.
That would be brilliant.
So it's like you can read it.
Yeah. We've been recording as well, so we'll be able to kind of send that out alongside it to help. But they'll get the sound this time, which would be nice. That was really brilliant. I think that's hit home again some of the things we've heard from other speakers today about the importance of kind of collaborating, being able to get on and work with other people, networking. I also really liked the name of one of the pieces of software was called Reaper, which I thought was brilliant. Earlier, so yeah, I really enjoyed that. We have a couple of minutes if we've got any questions that people want to put in the Q&A. Natasha, I don't know if we've had any come in. in the meantime?
Not as of yet. However, I just want to reiterate to everybody that we've got another 60 seconds or so if anyone wants to put any last minute questions through. And just thanks again, Josh, for your time, and that was really insightful. Again, just some of the key takeaways there, massive one being community, and finding a community. It sounds like the games industry, especially in the sound space, is a lot smaller than maybe I would have thought. Obviously someone with a non-games background, that's quite interesting for me, and I think that's quite an advantage, really. A lot easier to network and things potentially there. So another 30-40 seconds and then we will close that off.
Yeah, it's quite surprising how slow it is actually, because how small it is. Sorry, because I think in the UK we're probably talking less than 1,000 professionals, and then worldwide maybe less than 30,000, 25,000 maybe. So it's very everyone knows everyone, and everyone's generally nice. So
Amazing.
I think it was really interesting what you said as well about maybe not all roles being advertised and some of those coming through kind of networks and connections that you had as well. Because I know we've had a lot of questions from people around, how do I go about getting my first role? How do I find out about these roles? It really, again, comes back to that kind of that network that you build and the people that you meet, and making time for that within your kind of career journey as well.
Yeah, I think the key is as well to go to these events not trying to get a job, instead trying to make new friends, and then the job thing will follow that naturally.
Nice.
You can smell a mile off when you're at an event like this, and you can tell who's just fishing for a job. And don't want to talk to them. But if someone tries to make friends with you and then you have an opportunity, then you'll let them know about it.
That's nice advice there, Josh. I think, similarly to the previous session, saying about sometimes positioning it more as like making friends and, getting to know people is a better way to go about it than also for young people as well. It can be quite daunting to go to these sorts of things, especially when you're not as experienced in the industry. So great advice. I'm just going to look at this question. So someone asked, this was one from earlier, which I think may have already been covered off in the previous session, but just about tips on getting your first kind of role in the industry. I don't know if we've covered that on this session, but if we haven't, maybe it's one we can bring into just to get your expertise and your insight from, really, Josh.
So you need to have a portfolio, which means so you need a website, and on that website you need to have work that you've done. It doesn't necessarily have to have been for a game that released or anything. Sound designers often will take a gameplay clip from a proper game that's actually been released and mute the sound on that, and then redesign all the sound themselves for how they would envision it would sound like. And then alongside that, you have the implementation side, where you might take another student's game or an Unreal Engine example project, implement the middleware into it, and then make that sound how you would envision it should sound. And then from those, you have technical breakdown videos where you walk the viewer through what you've done and how you've implemented the sound into the environment. Put those on your website, and then you combine the best bits of all of that into a show reel, which should be around a minute long, which is like a trailer for yourself and your work. And then when you've got all that, then you're in a position where you can apply for actual job postings. And then while you're doing all that, go to all the network and stuff and make some friends. If your work's good and you get along with people and you go to all the events, then eventually it will happen. So yeah.
That's brilliant, Josh. I think that's really helpful to kind of know the order that you kind of are doing things in. And I think you said it earlier as well about a bit of luck in knowing people, but also if you hadn't been prepared, that opportunity would have gone past you. I think that's a really key piece of advice for people that are on the call, is just you don't know when it's going to come up. So be prepared, have those things ready to go in the background, which is great. Brilliant. I think we probably need to head off so that people can have a quick break and a bit of lunch in between. But I just want to say a really big thank you, Josh, for that. It was really useful for me actually to not just hear about your journey, but also kind of how it actually all works and pulls together. It's just not something I'd really thought about before, even as someone that plays games. So I think I've got a new appreciation for it now as well. I hope some of our learners and listeners that are on the call will as well.
Right. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
We are back this afternoon with 2 more speakers, who I'm quite excited about. I'm quite interested in this next one that we've got. So next, we have Morrigan Pickford, who is one of our staff at Access Creative. Yes, thank you, Louise. That's lovely. But yeah, just welcome back, everyone. We're glad to have everyone back with us and to be running this event in partnership with our industry professionals. Just a little reminder, we've got Morrigan, as we said, and she's going to be talking to us a little bit about doing it yourself. If you were with us at the very beginning of the day, I mentioned that there are over 2,000 different games, kind of businesses, companies across the UK. I think Morgan's session will explain a little bit more about some of those indie and kind of smaller companies that we have around the country as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Morrigan, who can tell us a little bit more. Can you hear and see us okay? Is your camera and mic working?
Hi.
Brilliant. So Morrigan's joining us from Access Creative College in Norwich. She's one of our staff members there. And yeah, she's going to tell us a little bit more about how you can do it yourself.
Yeah, I work for TheVampire's Manor. I own TheVampire's Manor. I'm a founder of it. And I also work in outreach for a company called Hunter's Moon Games. Both of these are Norwich-based indie studios who have received some funding through the UK government. And additionally, I run a work experience program to help get juniors into the industry, which I'll talk about a little bit later. To get the bragging rights out of the way, I'm a 3-time award winner and 4-time award shortlister, which feels really weird to say at 25 years old. But I won the 2024 Develop Her Award, which is an award specifically about women in tech for emerging talent. I won the 2025 UK Startup Awards East of England Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, which is a big mouthful. And I'm in MCV Develops 30 Under 30 as well for 2025, which all 3 were amazing to get, and they are mostly attributed to my work with the work experience program. But it hasn't always actually been that great. So for those who may know the area, I grew up in Stamford, Lincolnshire, which is kind of a little bit of a nowhere area. The closest major city is Peterborough, which, as I can imagine, a lot of you will feel sorry about me being in such close proximity. But I didn't have a games background. I was an academic. I did A-levels in biology, media theory, and combined English. I did art on the side as a sort of hobby, but that was about it, to be honest. I played video games in my spare time, but I was actually bullied pretty relentlessly for liking them. At the time, Stamford was still relatively conservative, and it was very much a boys do one thing, girls do another. And I grew up neurodivergent on top of this, so it was a little bit of a struggle trying to put forward what I wanted to do. And creativity in itself wasn't an issue. It was actually seen as a relatively girly subject, but only if you were into things like fashion or fine art, maybe graphics at a push. The idea of wanting to be a video game artist was pretty much unheard of, and very much discouraged, at least on my end. I was lucky that my family and friends wanted me to succeed in that way, but I thought it would be smarter to go down the academic route, and I wanted to become a scientist. And then randomly, while I was doing my UCAS application at my college, I just changed my mind. I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to go into video games. I love video games. They've made me feel so much better and more confident in myself. So I did a bit of quick research and got accepted into Norwich Uni of the Arts right when COVID hit. So it was a bit of a rocky start, but it did fully change my perspective on the industry and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And over COVID, I remember being so frustrated that we weren't given the same internships or apprenticeships or anything that our previous years had just because of the pandemic. And I kept thinking, why, for my friends especially, have they not been able to be given these opportunities? And why couldn't I you know, if I had a job higher up in the industry, I would just give that to them myself. And I was laying there in our shared accommodation thinking, I would just do it myself. I can just do it myself. So I made a company in my bedroom. I dragged all of my housemates into it and said, we're making a video game. No, you don't get a choice. And that spanned from 5 people now into 15 and about 70, 80 technical interns through our work experience program. TheVampire's Manor took off immediately. We've been working on our debut game called Fox, which we've taken all up and down the country. We've been from Birmingham to Brighton with this game. working on it for about 3 years now as our debut title. And it's taught us so much more than we could have ever hoped. We've had such an amazing reception on it from all over the country, and if even all over the world, as we've been developing on it. And it's been a truly life-changing experience. And, you know, even then during this, it's been a case of I still have had to do it all myself. I had to learn how to make a company with the help from the Transfuser program, which is run by the UK government. I've had other studios pop up after us saying that we were their inspiration to making their own companies. I've had to learn how to do taxes. And it's horrible, but we've had to figure it out because I didn't have anyone to do it for me. And it's partially why I wanted to talk about the whole concept of doing it yourself. We weren't given the internships, and we weren't given kind of the time necessary to be able to form a place in the games industry. So I just did it for my friends, and it worked out far better than I could ever imagine. And around about this time, we were going off and showcasing to various universities and colleges, and Access being one of them multiple times. And I was asked a couple of times, like, well, would you consider taking on some apprenticeships or interns? And I thought that personally, I couldn't really provide that. We were all, and still are all, unpaid for our work in the Vampire's Manor until we get more funding. But I did remember that back in college, I did 2 weeks of a work experience program in a tattoo studio randomly. And that was genuinely something that was able to help me get jobs later in life because I technically had something on my CV. And this became, you know, one of the best decisions we've ever made as a company. We found that I still didn't get the same opportunities as my peers. Now, I can't say for certain if that's because of being a woman in the games industry, though, to be honest, I don't doubt it. My younger friends who graduate after me were struggling for internships. The industry has been rocky, to say the least. And I watched it kind of slowly close off the door on juniors right as I managed to get in. And I went back to that same thinking. I really wish someone could do something about this. Why is no one helping? Oh, wait, I can do something about this. So we made the TVM Work Experience program. And it started just with Access College, actually, where one of my good friends who worked here at the time said, can you come in and just scare the students a little bit? Just show them what it means to work in industry, give them a goal to reach, and then they will be a lot more motivated. So we started with a little boot camp for the students where we came in and delivered a live brief, and we held their hand and walked them through it and showed them exactly how it would be to work in a real studio. And I was showing this to a different student at the University of Sheffield, who then said, oh, well, I'm at uni level, but can I join? And it kind of spiraled out of control from there. The first year we had a cohort of 30, which was a mix of Access College students and then university students. And of those 30, a third of them got an industry job by the end of the year, which is absolutely insane. And we were so, so proud of that. So we decided to run it again last year, but we thought, you know, we'll open it up a little bit. We are going to aim for 40 students this time, and we're going to open up a development brief because prior we only had 2 art briefs. And I reached out to some friends I'd networked with from Games Jobs Direct, which are an absolutely amazing resource. I highly recommend looking into them. And they did a little post on their social media for us, just, you know, giving us a little bit of rep about how our last cohort did and how they've worked with us personally and really enjoyed it. And we then had 407 applications in 2 days. We'd planned to keep the applications open for about 3 weeks, but we had to shut them early because we were just so overwhelmed as a team. And the students' work is incredible. I got permission from the students to post these, but it was an amazing cohort. We had so many students who then went on to get industry jobs using the portfolios that we were able to provide them. We got such a great sense of helping out the younger generation as well, because at the end of the day, I made the studio to help my friends get into the industry, just to get their foot in the door. It counts as experience, it counts as completing a project, and it's done us so much good that it felt only right to share that with the generation that came after us. We are looking into the statistics of hosting the experience again this year. We are being a bit more careful about it because we simply took on too many last year, and we're going to be a little bit more diplomatic about handling it. And we are, in fact, applying for funding as well to be able to bring in some guest speakers and extra help for the experience. So, you know, keep your eyes out on that one. But it's been my single-handed greatest achievement. The awards are lovely, but the work experience is truly my golden heart in terms of the work that I've done. And my team have been an absolutely amazing asset in helping me to complete that. They pretty much handled it themselves while I was behind the scenes doing the admin work, and I'm so proud of them for it. And they are reaching newer and newer heights. Mid working for TVM, we've had members that have gone on to get jobs in industry. One of our developers, Tom, now works for Kudos QA. Our environment artist, Jack, works for Airship Interactive. We've had a couple of others that have gone on to get freelance work. It's been absolutely incredible. And to me, it's just a showcase that waiting around for the perfect opportunity will simply never work. Well, we have gotten lucky a lot of the time, especially in the funding we've received or the opportunities we've managed to get. A lot of it has just been the getting started and doing it. There is no harm in reaching out to that person you admire online. There is no harm in seeing if you can showcase somewhere, just going in and asking. It might seem really embarrassing, but it's gotten me so far in the industry because, frankly, being obnoxious is my favorite trait. I'm very good at walking up to people at gaming events and just saying, hey, I run an indie studio. Is there any way that we can work together on something? And I've had friends in industry as a result because of it. It's an incredible place to work, and it all starts from you just doing that first step. Nowadays, I'm still working for both companies. Fox is making a lot of progress, and I do the social medias for Dreaded Runde with Hunter's Moon Games. So to give you a little background on those, Fox is a artistic adventure game. Think Stray meets Okami meets Resident Evil, where you play as a little Arctic fox named Kari, and you have to go through the woods of northern Canada, escaping an eldritch biocorruption. The entire video game is in this oil-painted art style that I facilitated with my team. Everything is custom-made, hand-painted, as bespoke as we can get it, to look like an oil painting. And Dreaded Runde is a psychological horror game set in our own city of Norwich, where you have to escape local folklore tales using only your mobile phone and your grit. You have to travel through the undercrofts of the market, through the market itself, trying to escape creatures while looking at mystical runes. Both are incredible projects I'm absolutely honored to be a part of, and if you could give them a little wish list on Steam, that'd be really cool. And we will be showcasing both at Norwich Games Festival if you are able to come up and have a little look. The Norwich gaming scene is so fantastic in the way that it supports people. It's a very similar story of people just getting together, deciding we need a showcase in the East Anglian area rather than traveling all the way to London. Let's just do it. Let's make one. And it's been fantastic. It's been so successful. And I do recommend coming over just to see what the gaming scene is like over here, because it's absolutely brilliant. If I were to give a couple of tips and advice to those of you that are thinking of starting a studio or thinking about putting yourself out there, my biggest and most perfect piece of advice is that to be cringe is to be free. I don't understand where cringe culture has come from. I think that to be passionate about something, about anything, is the absolute most beautiful thing a human being can do. And it's genuinely what's carried me forward. I know that there's probably a lot of you that are rolling your eyes and thinking, yeah, but if I do it, and that's just simply not true. I'm extremely annoying, and I think that's honestly my favorite trait about myself, because it's gotten me as far as I have. In order to promote yourself and your team and your people, you need to be a little bit annoying, and you need to not be afraid of being annoying, because that confidence genuinely shines through and it makes people take you very seriously. The second being that if no one's doing it, there's not really much at least stopping you from starting it. There's a load of barriers in game development. I have a full-time job at Access, but prior I worked in a betting shop, and trying to run a game development company from a Ladbrokes was pretty difficult. And with no genuine large source of funding, it is hard. But we can at least get it started. You can make the concept of your game, you can make the GDD, you can get a team together of you and your friends. If you can get it started, somewhere along the way, it will pick up. And when you are working on your new project, work to your strengths, but be open to new ideas. Prior to working on Fox, I hated development. I loved concept art. I was okay with asset production, but you would not catch me dead touching Unreal Engine. Since then, I've been very much humbled by my developers into learning Unreal Engine, just so that the communication works better. And it's actually been pretty freeing and pretty fun to learn, despite my initial resistance to it. If you open your mind to new ventures and new things to learn, you will go so much further in the industry. And this doesn't just apply to games. I was a chef randomly once, just because I turned up to a restaurant I really liked and went, hey, do you guys want some help? Because I just kind of want to learn something new. I ended up, passing a course for it. And the other bigger one, and this is a weirdly common one in the games industry, is networking. It seems really simple for me to say, just walk up to somebody. But if you're somebody who's neurodivergent or has a huge issue with anxiety or social anxiety, that can be a huge hurdle. And I am here to say that I get it. But networking has been my biggest strength. The industry is very much a mix of what you know and also who you know. And things like the reason our work experience took off so much was because of Game Jobs Direct and their help with us. Because I happened to run into Darren Playford at a bar once, and we kicked it off talking about Colin Furs. It's totally random. You don't have to talk to them as a business pitch, but just try to make friends with everyone in the games industry. Because not only do you meet some really valuable people who will help build your confidence, but you can also take you and your team so much further. It's a wonderful industry to be a part of. And I recommend now, while you guys are a little bit younger, starting to learn those key socialization techniques. Because then when you get to my age and you're going to events, broadcasting your game, you know exactly what it is that you need to say. That's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I hope it's been at least a little bit insightful or possibly a bit inspiring into starting your own teams or your own game projects. And like I said about being annoying, please wishlist Dreaded Runde on Steam or support TVM Studios on our socials, because we don't have a Steam page yet. Hopefully soon, not that you heard that from me. That's pretty much all I've got for you guys today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Morgan. That was lovely to hear. We have got a question that came in. Can you repeat the name of the game that you were making? I think it has slightly odd spelling.
Yes, so if I should have to go back to it. Fox. Foqueus. It's a really stupid pun. I said about being annoying. We had a group discussion about what we wanted to call our game, and we had like Kari's Adventure and other such similar things. And I said, well, it's a Baroque game about foxes. Let's make it a pun, because I think it's funny. And it stuck. So that's now our game name.
Brilliant. That's great. Well, hopefully that answers that question. Natasha, have we got any other questions that have come in?
We don't know, but one, Morrigan, is that we've asked to some of our other guest speakers throughout today's sessions is kind of what advice would you give your younger self? Is there anything that you kind of wish you knew before you entered the industry? I think that's a great one, because we've had quite a few different perspectives so far. So I just wanted to see if we can get some insight from you.
If I was to be face to face from my younger self at college level, girl, breathe. Like, it's okay. I'm only just 25 this year, and I've already managed to complete so much without even realizing it, because I got too busy caught up in but what if it goes wrong, without thinking that I'm actually doing it. It felt weird for the first year or two of development to say, yeah, I'm an indie director. And I still feel weird talking about the fact that I've won things for it and that my team have gone places. Stop, breathe, and think about what you have got rather than what you haven't. And you'll realize that you will really closer to your goal than you ever possibly thought you could be. Would probably be the big one.
Great advice. And I just want to say, Morrigan, that I love your energy that you've brought to this call. I feel like you've provided so much insight in just a short amount of time. And yeah, just thank you so much for sharing those key takeaways. Which, again, just to remind everybody, if anyone who's new to the call, I can see our number of participants has shot up quite a bit in the last 10-15 minutes. We will be also sharing out all the slides and give you guys kind of a roundup of, the key takeaways, because there's a lot to unpack throughout today. But yeah, I think if there's no other questions, we'll just give another few moments there, just in case anyone has anything final for Morrigan that they want to put forward. But yeah.
I had a bit of a question, actually, just while we're waiting to see if any more come in. Morrigan, you mentioned earlier a bit about, very briefly, about investors. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How does that work?
Investors scare me. A big thing about indie development especially is that, yes, you can technically just make the game on your own time, and that's currently what we're doing. But if you have a bigger project, you're probably going to need some investors somewhere along the way. So the way we've done it, we took part in Transfuser, which is a bootcamp program run by the UK government. I think it's either 8 or 12 weeks, I can never remember, fresh out of graduating. I think you have between 0 and 3 years graduation to do it, where you get given a small amount of investment and you get shown how to set up your company, best practices for making a game, and there's always a showcase at the end of it. We were lucky enough to be a part of the last Insomnia, which is my biggest claim to fame. But since then, it's a case of going through either the grant route, which there's like the UK government, there's specific ones for women in games, there's one called Wings, which I really recommend looking at for underrepresented and marginalized genders and or races in games. There's private investment, where somebody who just happens to have a lot of money takes interest in your project or your company and gives you the money to complete it while taking a little bit back from your profits. Or there's the fundraising route, which is things like a Kickstarter or GoFundMe, where people will back a project to get it to completion and then they receive it once it's already been done. We're aiming more for the grant and investment route. Oh, and publishers, which is like an investor, but they also handle the distribution of the game usually, and they put their own money in as well to get it like out there into the world. We're going more the investor publisher grant route, just because crowdfunding comes with its own risks, particularly that if your crowdfund fails, an investor will not touch you. But if we never actually get any funding, which is possible, there is currently a shortage of all funding for video games at the minute. If we get none, we're just going to stick at the game anyway. If it takes us 5 years or 10, we're going to finish it. It's our passion project. It's our baby. I've got the main character tattooed on my arm, so I got to finish it either way. I'm pretty dedicated to it. If that answers your question, yes. It's a weird and rocky one, but there are loads of resources online for looking into this. I would just recommend doing it after you've already started making the game, because I had to learn all the admin first before I actually started producing anything, and that was quite painful. So I'd recommend getting into the fun of it first.
That's great. Thanks, Morrigan. And yeah, I think that's a useful background bit of information to know, I think. Around how the finances work, maybe things that we don't always think about first and foremost when we're thinking about games.
Get someone on your team that's good at maths, because I'm not, and it's painful.
I love the dedication to the tattoo as well.
I'm gonna get a dreaded Wonder one on the other side at some point. I'm just trying to design it at the minute.
Excellent. Have we got any other questions that have come in?
We do have one more that has just come through just then. So it's quite interesting because this question from this person is about, it mentioned social media and community, and I feel like those have been some really vital things that we've explored a little bit more throughout today's sessions. But again, just another perspective is fantastic from someone in a different area. We've kind of heard today from people in the sound space in particular, different areas across games. So Morrigan, I guess the question is, how important is community and social media in particularly when it comes to the games industry, putting yourself out there? We've talked a bit about networking, but maybe for people who, don't want to be out there all the time face to face, obviously that is quite important, having some, face to face interactions, but obviously the power of social media and basically how that can be a portfolio in itself. It'd be great to hear from you on that.
So it does depend a little bit on the genre of what you're making. If it's for your own work, social media is incredibly vital because that's how you get discovered. Working in specifically the horror game scene, word of mouth is the most powerful tool for horror games ever. Like if I said Poppy Playtime, everyone's probably heard of it, and they would have heard of it because at one point one YouTuber saw it on social media, decided to play it, and it spread like wildfire. Twitch streams, anything like that, all of these things will utilize social media in order to discover things, and it just becomes word of mouth, right? It's pretty vital. However, I wouldn't say that it's the be-all and end-all. If you're working on a game project, word of mouth can work just from being present at things. You don't even have to be there showcasing. If you're based in Norfolk, there is meetups every month. You do have to be over 18 to enter, unfortunately. But there are meetups every month for Norfolk-based game developers that will just chat and just hang out with each other. And that alone has done us so much good in terms of getting our work out there. Networking is a big one, and I have said from the get-go whenever I've done these sessions that it doesn't matter what part of the team you're on, you need to learn at least how to pitch yourself and your game. You don't have to be a masterclass at communicating, you don't have to get on a stage, but just being able to bump into someone at a cafe and say, oh, by the way, I work on a video game, is enough. And that, coupled with a strong social media presence, is pretty vital for getting your game out there. Though I will specify, if you're doing social media for your game, just act human. There's a weird thing, especially with the sort of AAA corporate scene, where all the social media accounts just act really strange and sanitized, and I don't really get that. If you're going to be posting about your game, be as passionate as you would be talking about it to your best friend. There is some level of professionality, of course, but the passion is what makes it so good. Make memes about your game, as cringe as you might think they are. Someone else will find them funny. And that's how we've reached most of our audience. The work experience took off because of social media. It's done us the best amount of good in the world.
Love that. Also the meme reference. I think, if there's one way to convey yourself as a brand these days and reach, especially, if depending on your game's target audience, I imagine, you can really get quite creative with those. So great advice there. I don't think there's any other questions in the Q&A box at the moment. So I think we'll leave questions for now.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
That's
and
brilliant.
Once again, wish list our games.
I love that little plug in there. It's important.
I got it. It's my job. I'm doing my job as outreach. I want to scare my developers.
Excellent.
I will leave
Brilliant.
you in the capable hands of my friend Birgithe. Hi,
Yeah.
Birgithe.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you have Birgithe with us? Brilliant. Birgithe, hello. I think we're going to take a very quick break just because we said we'll start at 12:30 and we might have some people that join us specifically for that talk. So I think we'll take a break just for a couple of minutes and we'll maybe come back in 2 minutes, maybe 29 minutes past, just to get your presentation and bits set up. I think we've got a few people that have just joined us. So if you're have just come in, that's brilliant. You can give us a little reaction, a little wave. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. It's our last one of the day, and I'm really excited because it's got a slightly different take from some of our other talks today, where we're going to be talking more about the art and the kind of design within the games. And we've got Birgithe with us. I'm sorry, I hope I really haven't mangled your name. Birgithe Runde, who is a concept artist at Antidote Games, but I know she also does a lot of freelance work and works in a lot of different ways. Antidote Games is a games company that creates content for children to help them stay safe online. But as I said, I know that you also do a lot of kind of freelance concept artist work as well, and you're going to talk to us a little bit about that today. So I will hand over to you if you want to share your screen, or I can share your presentation for you, however you want to do it.
Yes, thank you. That is my name. Yeah, you
Brilliant.
did it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my little talk. It's going to be about turning your art into a career. I'm going to break it down into 4 parts of how to start your freelance art career. I feel like I'm still in the beginning of my art career, so it is like that beginning and getting those first clients that I feel like I have the most experience in. Yeah, a quick introduction. Just saying hi, my name is Birgithe. I'm a Norwegian. I moved to the UK to do school. I work as a concept artist. I don't work for Antidote Gamers right now. That's the thing with freelance, that you jump around quite a bit. But I do freelance for multiple different things. Right now I work for Hyperliminal as well. I'm going to show a bit of pixel art I've done for them. And I graduated from NUA with Games Art and Design. I wanted to just also, as part of my introduction, show kind of what I do and what I like to draw. This is like my personal work, and this is a small selection of what I've done as a freelancer. The pixel art here is for Hyperliminal. Cool. So first, what is a freelancer? A freelancer is basically a self-employed worker that works for different clients and projects. You kind of choose and pick who you want to work for. You're not just a wage slave to one person. And it's very common in like the creative industry. There's some cons to this, of course. You don't have that sort of financial security of a wage every month. Some months you'll earn like half of what you earn the next month, and you sort of have to plan and have some savings around that to be able to pay your rent. And it is common to also have like a part-time job or do like a mix of things. You also have a lot more admin because you're self-employed, you're your own boss, and you have to do your own, like asking people to pay you with invoices and doing your own taxes once you earn enough. You don't really have to do taxes until you earn like $1,000 in a year, something like that. So like doing a commission here and there, you don't have to do taxes on that. Also, as a freelancer, you have to find your own work. Like you have to keep finding projects to work on and connecting with new people or connecting with the same person a couple different times. Yeah, so self-marketing is something I'm gonna get into. There are also pros though. There's a lot of freedom to being a freelancer because you can choose exactly what you want to work on and who you want to work with. And how much you want to work as well. You don't have to work full-time anything, really. You choose your own rates as well. You can charge exactly what you'd like and feel comfortable charging. And I find that quite good overall. It's also, freelance can be a really good way to enter the industry at first, because instead of putting all your eggs into one basket of applying for one job or spending loads of time applying just for studio jobs, you can sort of sneak your way in by getting into studios by being a freelancer. You get a lot of connections this way. And from the studio's perspective or from like the client's perspective, it's a lot lower stakes to hire you because they can hire you for like 2-3 weeks to do some art. And then if it fits or if they want to keep it or, you know, whatever happens, it's not the same as hiring someone full time. Like I said, it's great for building experience because you learn a lot being a freelancer. And that will just be helpful overall in a career going forwards. Another pro of freelancing is that it doesn't have to be 100%. You can do freelance and school. I started my freelancing while I was still in uni. You can have a job on the side. You can do exactly as much as you want to do. And here are the tips I'm going to be covering. I keep slamming my ring into my desk. Sorry about that. My tips are be visible and obnoxious, have some range, be busy and employ yourself, and grow a garden. And I'm going to get into these now. First, to get people to see you, you have to make yourself be seen. You want to essentially have your art be as accessible as possible. If you meet someone on the street, can you pull up your phone and be like, well, you know, here's my art if you wanted to see it? Or meeting someone on networking, can you give them like one link that gives them all the cool art you do? This is really valuable because the more hoops someone has to jump through to see your stuff, the harder it's going to be to get hired. I would recommend a website. I don't have a website, but I should have one. I use ArtStation and Instagram. Tumblr is good. People post art on LinkedIn. You can do that if you want as well. But having like one place for both portfolio, but also like just art in general, your personal one could be really cool to show people as well. I would recommend to use your real name on this like big database of your work because this makes you seem way more trustworthy and professional, and it doesn't like it doesn't bring weird connotations to some like wacky username. If you want to have like a catchy, cool username, you can still do that. I do that, but then I keep my real name in my bio so that I'm very Googleable. If someone, you know, meets me and remembers my name, they can search me up. It's connected to my LinkedIn. All of my like ArtStation, Instagram, LinkedIn are all together, so people can just find me very easily. Other ways to like just be visible is to just do stuff. Post your art to fun like Discord groups you're in. Maybe when you're on a call with friends, just share what you're drawing. You can join collabs on Instagram. Like just put yourself out there and make people look at it, because every pair of eyes that lands on your art is an opportunity for them to be interested or hire you, or, you know. And if this feels obnoxious, I'd say that's like a good thing, because that's going out of your comfort zone and just being proud of what you've done and the art you make. I also put here applications, because when you apply to jobs, it can be a win even if they don't hire you, because the studio has now seen your work and they might remember you in the future if there's another opening, or, you know, if they don't hire you, they still like see it, and the people there, you're in their mind. You got to infiltrate, you know. Your local scene is a really big topic that I put as just one keyword, but the idea is just like getting involved in your local scene is really good after school and things, because you have like people that you get to connect with, and people meeting you in person will just have a way stronger impression of who you are, and they'll remember you better. So get in your local scene. It's really good. Like there's Norwich ones. I go to the Norwich game dev meetup, so you might see me there if you go. Highly recommend it. My tip 2 is to have range. And there's kind of two arguments here. When you work in more indie scenes and you do more indie client work, the more skills you can offer, the more work you can get, essentially. Because a game studio will have a lot of different needs at different times. If they're done with the concept art phase, they might still need some logos for their company, or UI design for their game, or a poster for something. Like there's loads of different avenues to get stuff to do. there's many tiny tasks that people need except just concept art. I put some down here. A commissions count as well. But if you do also want to specialize a bit more and not like be a bit of a generalist like I am, I would still recommend having a really good range within the specialism you choose. Because like if you hire a character artist and all they want to draw is just pretty anime girls, like that's very few games. You're limiting yourself quite a lot to what characters you can do. And I'm such a victim of this. I love drawing pretty girls, but if your character, like do the range of characters, every type of character. If your environment, do every kind of environment. Like you just want to be able to have skill for every situation you land in. I've done some weird ones, you know, some weird client work, and the less picky you are, the more work you'll get to do. So I do recommend like doing some weird side quests and some weird little jobs. And I want you guys to be like Kirby and like just gobble up all the jobs you can find. Get every single one. My tip number 3 is to be busy, because another word for freelance is also unemployed. No one has employed you. And there's many times when you're a freelancer where you just sort of run out of things to do and you got to find some more things. And if you just sit in your room, just twiddling your thumbs, playing some Genshin, just not doing anything, nothing's gonna happen. So when there's nothing else to do, I really like making my personal projects and kind of hiring myself to work on my projects. Be your own concept artist, kind of. And this is great because it still gives you that experience. You get to set off time to like work on the stuff that makes you passionate and that, you know, will be those long-term goals in your art career, like a dream game, a dream comic, a dream like art book. There's so many things you could do here. I'd also really like put emphasis on setting aside time as like to have a studio for yourself. Because when you're in school or you're working, it's really easy to get too busy. And then when you get home, you just want to relax and there's not enough time to grow your career on the side. So if it's possible to set aside like one day a week where it's like, this is the time to stalk people on LinkedIn, grow your career, set like a good to-do list and goals, that helps me a lot. And it also, it's like setting studio time, apart from just drawing time, shifts your brain to be more like, this is my job and I'm a professional and I deserve to be paid for this. Which is like, it is a bit hard to do that mindset shift. Yeah. Also, yeah, being busy includes doing some weird ones. One time, I think I painted a skateboard for a treasure hunt for like a Christmas event for kids. And like, did that lead to anything? No. Did I get paid for it? No. But it was cool to keep busy, and it was a really interesting project that I learned a lot from. This is my last tip, and I think this one's quite important. When you start a career, it all comes like, it's going to come very slowly, and there's going to be things that, let me start over. Growing a garden is basically the idea of taking people, connections, opportunities and planting them in your garden. And then you can tend to many of them at once and water many of them at once. And what comes up of them can be great. They can blossom into something. One of them might be, you know, a one project, and then a year later, another project. And keeping that healthy, keeping those connections like intact, will eventually get you a really full and nice garden that can pay your bills. So, you know, not putting all your eggs in one basket lets you grow a really nice garden, I think. And some of them might lead to nothing, but that's the point of having multiple connections. Yeah. My final takeaways are: make yourself known and visible. Being less picky will get you more work. Don't sit around and wait. Be like proactive in getting work, and tend to that garden over time to grow a career. Thank you so much. That's my whole talk. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it on this slide, I guess.
That's brilliant. I'm really enjoying the animations as well, Birgithe.
Thank you.
Very well received, Birgithe, as well. We're getting a lot of good reactions from our audience because they can see and hear us, but we can't see and hear them. So it's really nice to have feedback from everyone. Lots of thumbs up, hearts. So yeah. I think one question that has just checked the box. I did see something just before. So amazing. One question in here is about what makes a particularly strong portfolio. So sort of any key takeaways for someone that's wanting to become a concept artist themselves, that's just kind of starting off on the journey. Okay.
A good portfolio. I mean, I think this is a topic that's covered a lot. I've seen a lot of answers for this. And I don't want to give like a cookie cutter one of just like, ooh, do only the small best ones, or do like 5 great ones are better than 20 bad ones. But that is true. I think having a good portfolio is giving context to what you were trying to achieve with the piece, if that makes sense. Like, say you have a Red Riding Hood and a wolf or something, right? That on its own, without context, is just, okay, that's a pretty drawing, but like, what is it? What's happening? What's the project? But putting a description being like, I changed up the fairy tale to be like this and this. I wanted to represent this and this. These characters are meant to be this and this. Then the person seeing your portfolio can see, okay, what were you trying to achieve, and did you achieve it? Like, yeah, is this communicating what I'm saying that I'm trying to communicate? I think that's my best tip.
I think that's a great tip. I think that's a great piece of advice personally. And yeah, giving that context lets people see, you know, if they were going to give you a brief, how do you work with that? So I think
to show up that you can do a brief. Exactly.
That's great. If anyone else has any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A box. I can see some of them starting to come in, which is great.
Yeah. We've just had another just there. So their question to you, Birgithe, is how do you go about dealing with clients who don't pay / aren't satisfied with your work? Do you follow up with it, cut your losses, or deal with it case by case? That's a really good question.
Yeah, man. I mean, luckily that hasn't happened to me that much. I think that's something that happens more when you do like commissions for people, commissions on like social media or something, and maybe both sides feel a little sketchy, like you don't know them, you've never met them, they're just a person. But I did have to chase people for pay a couple times, and you just keep it professional. You're just like, hey, this didn't come through to me. Would you double check if you sent that to me? I would never like, get on their case and be like, wah, 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 I deserve to be paid. I'd rather keep it professional and like give them the benefit of the doubt, I suppose. People being unhappy with your work, people will have feedback if they want you to deliver something and it didn't quite fit. And I mean, that's your job as a concept artist, is to take what people want you to draw and draw that. So if they're not happy, I would ask for, what's the feedback? What would you like me to change and improve? And then just try to work from there. But if people are assholes to you, don't work with them. That's the whole point of being freelancers. You have freedom. You do not have to stay anywhere you don't want to. Yeah, that's my best reply to that.
That's great. Thank you, Birgithe. Anything else coming in, Natasha?
No, nothing at the moment. If anyone has any final questions, where can they get in touch with you, Birgithe? Maybe like LinkedIn or...
Oh, please do. Yes, I'd love to. I'm Birgithe Runde on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram at Silkira, or just Birgithe Runde. Just Google it. Yeah, please contact me. That'd be so fun. I'd love to give more tips, see art. Yeah.
That's great. I'm sure we've had a lot of people join this call. It's been a really popular session, so you might get a little bit overrun by some of that. Yes. But I think that's a really lovely thing for you to offer. And yeah, they can see more of your work on there as well, which I think will be great. Maybe we'll give a final 30 seconds in case anyone else has any questions they want to ask. Oh, yeah, I can see some of them coming in now.
Another that's come in. I can also see Saul, you've popped your hand up. If you've got a question, feel free to pop it in the Q&A box. So Talon's question is, what is your refund policy?
again, this feels more like commission territory, but the way I charge people at the moment is I charge per day I've worked when it's in the studio, and I can't refund a day. Like, I did the day, so that just doesn't happen. I would man, I don't know. I've never given a refund, and I guess I wouldn't want to. I'd much rather try to get the product where they want it to be.
Yes,
That's
more
a great
Yeah.
bit of advice, definitely. I've just seen we've had some more questions. So we have had 2 from Saul. So the first part is, how do you source your freelance clients? I feel like it's best to tackle that first. And then his further question is, was it through your own pursuit or did they reach out to you? And what was the process? So kind of a 2-part question there, Birgithe.
Yeah, okay. Sourcing clients is going to be just wildly different every single time, I suppose. Like, some of them I've met in person first. Some of them I've done free work for first, as like Antidote Gamers is a charity, and I went to events like charity. I search job boards quite a bit. I search LinkedIn around quite a bit. The Anyway job board is great, but you guys aren't there, so that's a terrible reply. Sometimes I like sneak around in niche areas of the internet, if that makes sense. Like doing fan art of a kind of niche game, like could open up possibilities to, you know, work with that game or have commissions from the people that like that game. Just getting into gaps in the market, I suppose. Yeah. It's a whole skill in itself, though.
Sounds like a lot of research and being very proactive. Yeah. Productivity is really, really key.
Another question. I feel like we are loving the questions today, guys. There's some really good ones in here. And the next is an anonymous, and it's someone that's asked, where would you say you get the most freelance work? I've been doing commissions on Twitter and would like some advice.
Oh, great. Yeah, commissions are good. Where have I got the most freelance work is working with actual studios instead of individuals. Because individuals, like, they're really great. But studios they have more money and they have more things that need done, and they will usually be like a repeat customer, I suppose. If you can find an organization that needs something, they will be more helpful to you than commissions, in my opinion. And commissions are great, but like scalable, make it like your career. I would say organizations, charities, if you can do logos, posters, art for bigger entities, they will have more money. Was that a thumbs down? Oh, man. I'm not
the ones that like big companies. Oh dear.
Yeah, no.
But this is the reality of your experience.
What'd you say?
I think this is the reality of your experience, and we're thankful for you sharing that with us. Anything else, Natasha, that's come through?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, that's all the questions we've got at the minute. If there is any, we'll give you 30 seconds or forever hold your peace. Obviously, Birgithe kindly said that you can also follow up if you do have any additional questions. We've had one more. We've had another that says, what has been your favorite project to work on? Great question.
Oh my God. Oh, that's a great question. Let me tell you. This one right here, this dragon in the corner, this was a random ass job I found on a job board that was like, we need a mural for a children's school. And I was like, whoa, that'd be so cool. I applied. It went like 2-3 months and I never heard from them. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't get it. And then they emailed me and they're like, do you want to do a mural? We have like 8 meters of wall for you to do. And I was like, yes. What in the world? And so I did this design. This is digital, obviously, but I did this design. I got all the paint I needed. They gave me like a materials, funds for materials. And I went there and I spent, 2 weeks in the summer painting a big ass dragon, and I've never been happier. It was so great.
It looks beautiful as well.
Thank you. I don't have pictures of it on the wall, but it's on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Promotion.
There you go. If you want to see what it actually turned out to be, have a look on the
Yeah,
Instagram.
no, that's definitely the best one.
Yeah. That sounds
Amazing.
lovely as well. Was it nice weather?
Yeah,
I
it
can
was
imagine
warm.
it'd be less good in the rain.
Oh, it was inside, by the way. I was fine.
Inside.
Yeah.
Wow, 8 meters of wall inside. That's quite cool.
Yeah.
That's
These
good.
are really cool. In terms of questions, I think that covers it for now. So we will close that off then in terms of the Q&A.
Brilliant. Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone. And thank you, Birgithe, for that. That's been really, really insightful.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Happy Women's Day on Sunday.
Yes. Yes. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. That's great. So that concludes all of our speakers for today. Thank you. I know some of you, I think, have been on the call since like 10:15 this morning. Tough going, guys. Well done. I hope it's been insightful. It's been helpful, that you've learned quite a lot. I know I've learned quite a lot, things that I hadn't even thought about before. So I hope that you've enjoyed that, taken some good advice and tips away, and best of luck in your careers as you're going forward. If you do want to find out a little bit more about us at Access Creative College, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen now. This will take you to our courses. The ones that are kind of most relevant to games we've put up on that slide, but we also offer courses in music, media and design courses as well. I'll leave that up for a second in case anyone wants to scan it and find out a little bit more.